I'd like to call the Duval Committee of the Whole workshop to order for February 3rd, 2026 at 5:30 p.m. First item on tonight's agenda is the review of the regular meeting agenda. I know it's a fairly packed agenda, but are there any comments, concerns, or requests of the regular meeting agenda?
So the Keep Washington Working Act, as it says right here, in 2019, they passed what's called the Keep Washington Working. And the purpose was to ensure that Washington remains a place for people to maintain their rights and dignity, and also maintain and protect and keep Washington working. It restricts the extent with local law enforcement agencies to participate in the enforcement of federal immigration laws, and the Attorney General's office create a model policy for agencies to adopt or to identify areas they don't comply with and state the reasons why they do not comply. The model policy is pretty extensive. A copy of the model policy and our department policy is on the counter over there for people to review. But it is very extensive, and not all police agencies have adopted it by statute. They all have some modification to their policy. One of the requirements we have is to submit our policy down for them for review. It has been submitted, but we still haven't had it posted on the website. So next page, please. So here's some highlights of the AGO's model policy. Local law enforcement cannot enforce immigration laws. It's not within our RCWs, it's not within our state laws, it's not within the aspect of police officers' authority in our state. It is often a federal and civil violation that is also enforced by federal enforcement. Law enforcement agencies cannot ask or collect information from persons' immigration or citizenship status, except for certain circumstances where a consular notification may need to take place. But for the most part, we're prohibited from asking or collecting data regarding their citizenship. And then it prevents us from providing immigration authorities information regarding a person's release date from local custody or detention. There have been a lot of requests from federal authorities, immigration authorities, to get that data or that information from our jails and correction facilities. But the law prohibits that sharing of that information in our state. There is often a different thing called a warrant versus a detainer. And a lot of times there's what's called a federal detainer regarding immigration that isn't honored in our state. So that's one some of the things that I can't really tell people when somebody's going to get out of custody. I shouldn't even know what their immigration status is because I don't ask that. And then it prohibits a law enforcement from detaining or taking someone into custody solely to determine their immigration status or solely on a civil immigration warrant or detain. That's what I kind of talked about. There's often a lot of federal detainers that aren't actually a legal authority for me to arrest somebody or detain somebody on it. And so the Keep Washington Working Act, as well as the AG's model policy, talks about prohibiting that ability for us to do so. And then limits access of federal authorities to interview individuals in custody about non-criminal matters such as civil immigration. We have laws and data in place that allows us to track if anybody has made that request. There are also things that we have to prohibit them from doing. We can't allow them into our facility to interview somebody solely for immigration violations. there are times when we can allow individuals from federal authorities to interview individuals we have in custody, but those are related to homicide, a criminal violation that maybe the FBI is investigating versus somebody solely for immigration status. And prohibits us from entering into contracts that grant officers and federal immigration authorities. So I can't participate in a contract, or I can't have my officers become deputized to enforce federal immigration laws. They're prohibited from that. If we have any contracts that allow that, whether they're part of a federal task force, I can't allow that to happen. It has to be specified in the contract that prohibits that language. And all these provisions also are required by our SRO, our school resource officer. So, and it also prohibits the sharing of equipment and facilities for use in immigration enforcement. I can't allow them to use any of our equipment. I can't allow them to use any of our facilities to do any immigration enforcement. So if they called up and said, hey, which we don't have, if you had an armored car, we need to use that for immigration enforcement, I can't authorize that. Or if there are certain radios or equipment, we don't have tear gas, but if we had tear gas, we said we want to use any munitions for any type of immigration, deterrent, or enforcement, you couldn't authorize that. So essentially, we're not able to do anything with them going through that process. Next one, please.
Next.
So Duval PD has implemented the policy, and we've gone through this since I came on board. I'm used to the policies from where I came from. We also had a policy in place. I modified our policy, make sure it conforms with the AGO's model policy. About a year ago, when some executive orders were issued by the president, I also provided a message that was posted on our website, and it still is posted on the police website for frequently asked questions, so people can see what my statement is. And it confirms things that are included in the Keep Washington Working Act that we can't do. And then compliance with the model policy is also a requirement to be in compliance with the implementation of public sales tax, which was approved by council last year. And part of the process for implementation of this, the tax, is also to seek some community input. We've kind of waited for this process to make it to this stage, as because of the tax. We would have had this type of a process earlier in the year, but this is part of the kind of the conclusion for that aspect to make sure we go through it. And then Duval PD's policy 412, which is listed as immigration violation, also follows the AGO's policy and has been submitted by the AGO. The Attorney General has to review the policy to make sure it has confirmed to conform to their policy. But some of the items that are highlighted here as that our policy covers is such as the enforcement immigration laws and policies are prohibited, that there is some information sharing requirements that we can't share certain information with the federal authorities, except for it's provided by law, and our state law is what we go by. There's still some federal law that allows for some of that information sharing as it pertains to those criminal violations that they have of a higher level documentation. And then access to a person detained in custody, we have that restriction. We have a log that we keep. We have not, since I've been here, and through our records, have never had anybody from immigration attempt to try to identify or speak with anybody in custody with a And UMT visas, for those of you that may not know what those are, there are certain visas that we can grant, law enforcement can grant to people that are either a victim or a witness of certain types of crime to allow them to stay on their visa. It is something that I have the authority to do in coordination with the prosecutor's office to make sure that my witnesses and my victims are able to be there to prosecute in that case. Data collection, again, as we talked about earlier, I can't collect certain data. My officers can't collect that data. So that's prohibited in our policy. And it does cover such things as consular notifications as to under what circumstances we can make those consular notifications. If there are certain countries that do have, I think there's 13 right now, that have a requirement that if somebody from their country was arrested, that I have to make those notifications to their consulate. And then, equal treatment for persons in custody. I can't treat anybody different, depending on their rate, their origin, their immigration status. I can't treat them any differently than anybody else we have. And then there's I've talked about contracts involving immigration enforcement. Talks a little bit in the policy about stipulations that have to be in within that contract that prohibit the partnership in that contract to not sharing of that data, internal data or anything like that as we go forward. And it has a list of about 10 items that we have to annually train on to make sure that our officers are current in the training and the process we go through. So in order to make sure that we're meeting some of the community needs as well, that's why we felt that the CAL was a very good position for this to have, to seek out some community input as to whether or not there's things that they would like to see different or some comments regarding the policy or anything else we have going on. We also included some contact cards on the counter over there and some pens that they can also supply some comments to me, so I could have those for consideration, make sure that I compile those and keep those on file as to the response from the community regarding this community outreach or this type of communication we go through.
Chief Keller, City Administrator, I know that we didn't sort of talk a little bit about the methodology we're going to use in this. There's obviously the comment cards. Do you have any specific suggestions or ideas around how we would solicit community?
Yes, so I'm waiting for Chief to finish. So for the community, this is being recorded, so you can go back and listen to anything that's been said. The slide will also be on our website. The documents that we've referred to, the Washington Attorney General's policy, as well as Duval's policy, will be on our website. So all of the documents will be available to the public as well as the recording. For tonight, because we're in a workshop and public comment rules don't apply quite the same way, it really is intended to be a conversation. So if you have a question, you can either come to the podium and feel very formal about it. You can sit next to Council Member Wiggins. But opportunity for you all to ask questions about our policies, how we implement them, things you would like to see potentially different depending on your level of understanding of our policies. So really, informal, but reasonable. Call on you, invite you to the podium, or invite you to sit at the table, whatever your preference is.
And this session relates directly to our policy on keep watching and working and whether it complies with the AGO's model policy, as well as to see if it fits within our communities.
Great. And yeah, I know there are also just some general concerns that have come up on the social media. I think the chief did a great job of outlining the process, Washington, what we can and cannot do, but if there's any sort of clarifying questions, I think there was sort of, a public comment today. We have a lot of immigrants in our community, and so just the sort of general feeling safe within the community. We want everyone to feel welcome in part of the community. So I don't know if we have anyone who's interested in coming up to share a comment. You can. I want to make it as comfortable for you as possible. So also feel free to ask the question from where you are.
That's you.
Call
Yeah.
it on that way. Yes.
I have a question. So my question is about crowd control in particular. Federal employees are not really supposed to be delving into that area of crowd control. They're supposed to be doing their federal law duties. And I see they're violating that instance. We're allowed to protest, and that can be from yelling to blowing whistles, singing, whatever. As long as we're not impeding them, we should be able to do that, correct?
Correct.
And
you have that freedom of speech and going through that process.
So what would your actions be if you were seeing that interaction going on?
Our role is to document to make sure we collect the data regarding that. We have body-worn cameras that we wear. We will have those activated whenever we're there. Oftentimes, we don't get the call before they show up. We get the call after they show up. And in a lot of the regional areas here, when immigration has shown up, it has been a very quick process, a very targeted process, and not really necessarily allowing for the protests to begin. They have certain guidelines and regulations and rules that they follow federally that I can't follow. I have very strong restrictions regarding use of chemical agents or any type of crowd control devices that they may have a different policy on. But our role, if we show up with one of those issues, is to try to de-escalate the situation, to manage the crowd, to make sure that we limit any type of that interaction that may cause people to be.
Yes. Building on that. So if you show up, granted it hasn't had different effect, but if you do end up showing up and you see them assaulting one of these bystanders who hasn't done anything wrong, will you intervene?
I don't know if they've done anything wrong, so it's for me to investigate that. It is for me to make sure that I look at the full picture of that process.
And if the person's not resisting, but they're being assaulted anyways, will you intervene?
I can't give you a yes or no answer on that without knowing the circumstances that began that process.
So, yeah, so provided, I mean, we're gonna stick with that for a second. So provided you witness, because I mean, you guys are trained in your policies and your procedures. If your officer witnesses a blatant violation of your city code, your rules, or your state law by a federal officer, how are you gonna?
We investigate it to the best of our ability based on the information we have. If there's the ability to pull charges, we will forward a case off to the prosecutor for charges on an individual. Our primary role is to be there to identify who the people are, to make sure they are people with legitimate reason, and to document the incident as much as we can, but also to maintain cases of.
So to follow up on that, if he's wearing a mask, how do you document his identity?
There have been no reported circumstances where law enforcement in our state has contacted ICE or federal authorities or they haven't identified themselves to us.
I know there's been instances of people impersonating ICE. So how are you differentiating them from ICE, even if they're not, their masks aren't, their faces aren't covered?
They have to provide identification to us when we ask for it.
So if you come up across a situation where, you know, seemingly, federal officers are like someone mentioned, assaulting a citizen who's not resisting, but you have not identified them as federal officers yet, how do you proceed there?
It is our officer's role to try to make that identification first. A lot of the stuff that you see on the news and go through this process, and it is very traumatic, very dramatic in that aspect. There have been no instance of that happening in our state as of this moment in time. They have been very cooperative when police have shown up. And the enforcement they use in our state has been very targeted towards individuals that have had criminal activity in their background. I can't give you a yes or a no answer until I'm actually there and look at the process and go through it. It is our role to identify whether a crime has occurred, to report that, to document it, to forward it off to the prosecutor, to make sure the prosecutor reviews music for charge. That's our role. Oftentimes when we show up at events, it is much after the event has occurred. And it's already in some type of disarray or conflict that's occurred. So it takes a little bit of work, a lot of work at times, to try to identify what's happened prior to that. I know that there's a lot of fear and apprehension in our community. I do understand that, but I also know that there are often times that things happen and we don't know the whole picture before we get there. So it's really important for us to make sure we do our due diligence and document things as thorough and as accurate as possible to make sure that the proper determination can be made regarding charges or no charges.
Yes. And then.
Oh, okay. Yeah, to what extent would videos recorded on people's phones be part of your
That'd
investigation?
be part of us gathering that information. We have that ability to do so. We have the ability for people to send us in videos of events that occur, and that's one of the tools we use right now for any type of a crime. Let alone this type of event. And so it's highly important we recommend if you have that, and if that type of event happens, we would solicit it, make sure we have that.
Thank you.
My question is about information gathering and sharing. Because I think what we've sort of seen is that information was collected innocently on people and then now is being sort of weaponized against them. And I know that there are prohibitions about certain information being shared, but I'm wondering if you could get a little bit more into the details about what you are not prohibited, what you are prohibited from sharing, and what is not maybe not addressed. I think maybe I'm more
Give
concerned
me
about
give me an
what's not.
example of what you think. is going-
I wasn't thinking of anything in particular, but just because it's so vaguely laid out there, and maybe what I just need to do is
The
go.
water policy outlines some of those things such as
Okay,
citizenship status, immigration status, data that pertains to criminal activity or non-criminal activity, residence, those type of things are in that policy. We don't look for their passport. We don't ask for that type of information. But we can't share that data. We can't also grant individuals access to our database that we have at the police department. So if we had contact with somebody, but during that contact, some of that information is provided to us, not, we didn't ask for it, but it's provided to us. We have the way to prohibit that from going out. We can't share login information for any type of our databases. We can grant them access to those databases. Now, there always are times when people can go around it through a search warrant and go through that process, but it's something that would have to work through our prosecutor's office as well as through our legal to get, because there are some public records request laws that we have to follow. But when it pertains to immigration information as well as immigration status, we can't provide that. There's some very strong restrictions on that regarding the law. Hope that answered your question.
yeah, thank you.
Okay.
At the time, we have someone on Zoom.
Yes.
Hi, I think what I'm assuming people want to know is that if there is a case that their ICE is coming into our town, that we can count on the local PD to work in the best interest of the community instead of federal agents that might be skirting around the Constitution. So, I mean, I guess that's my question is like, can we as a community trust the PD to protect community members over federal agents, mainly ICE?
So our policy and rules and regulations require us to try to avoid any type of viewpoint of us being participatory in any type of immigration enforcement. It is our role and requirement to make sure we do our best to keep our community safe and to do our best interest for the city as well as for the Duval Police Department and the citizens and the residents of the Duval area. So that's our role. I can't say that we wouldn't be there when that process takes place, but we would not participate and we do our best to protect the citizens and the residents of Duval.
But does that mean standing aside and like helping crowd control
Mhm.
while the federal agents are doing it?
Could be, that could be part of it. But primarily what our role is de-escalation, right?
Yeah.
So, and de-escalation includes not only us dealing with those that are viewing and our constitutional observers, but also de-escalate the actions by the federal officers. So that's part of our role to do that. But crowd control is a very tricky situation, especially when you have an agency our size.
think we have one more question online as well.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. I was just wondering in regards to the new laws with the ALPRs, how you guys are handling that and what type of information is allowed to be accessed and used.
Duval Police Department doesn't use ALPRs. We don't have any in the city, and if we were to implement any of those type of process, we would have to have some more community meetings. Regarding that, there is some legislative action that's talking about restricting some of the data sharing for those agencies that still have them now. But the Duval Police Department does not utilize that type of technology, nor do we have an interest at this time of going forward with that type of technology.
You want to ALPR means?
Yeah, ALPR is automated license data collectors.
So there's no flock system being used right now and for the.
Flock is one of the systems. There's other ones out there. Yeah.
So what system does the Duval Police Department use then?
We don't have any. We don't use any of them.
So there's no license plate data that you guys can access?
Well, we can run a plate through WASIC, which is the Washington Criminal Information Center. But we have to manually see that, and the officer runs it through the radio. But we don't have an automatic license plate reader, one of those that has a camera that hits the license, that runs the data, that we can search at a later time. We don't have that information.
Okay, well, I'm just asking because that's not what happened to me last week, and everything was pulled from the license plate hit. So what system was being used?
I think we're not going to answer questions about specifics. I would recommend writing a question to the police department. We can't get into specific criminal matters in this meeting.
It wasn't a criminal matter. I'm just wondering, it's accessing information. That's what this meeting is about, right? Privacy and what can be accessed and used. And that's what I'm asking. So he just said that there is no access to anything because it doesn't exist. So I'm just sharing my story because I was told that it could.
Let me clarify this. Our officers have the ability to run license plates to return data information regarding the registered owner, the driver status of the individual, the any hits on there that might be for warrants or data that an officer may use to conduct an investigation such as a traffic accident. What you see for Flock, which is an automatic license plate reader, we don't have those in the city, and we don't utilize that data. We don't have any intention on implementing traffic cameras or automatic license plate readers in our city. Our officers always had and have had for years the ability to search through the Washington database regarding vehicles by radio or through their computer system through our dispatch. And that's how we gain that information, but we don't have an automatic license plate reader system.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, what is the difference then between the Flock system and what you just described?
The Flock system is a non-manned data collection system where a vehicle drives through the view of that camera. The camera runs the plate through the system, and an officer through a need later on can obtain that data through either a search warrant or through an investigation that relates to a criminal indictment.
Other questions from the room?
Please, if you have comments, there are cards over there. We really want to hear from you. So if you have any comments and concerns regarding the policy, please write it down. I'd like to look at the data. I know sometimes it may be difficult to speak in front of other people, but if there's any information you want to supply, please do.
I had one question, Chief, and I don't know if anyone in council, but it was specific just because you mentioned the SRO up here, and that's been another area sort of in the news. the SRO is obviously our contract. We work with the school district. They set policies around access. I was just curious in terms of the officers themselves are adhering to the policies that are up here. They're also, I know, working within the campus security policy set by the Riverview School District. I just thought that the room might be interested because that's sort of a top of mind.
Yeah, there have been some concerns regarding what happens if ICE shows up at the school, and the school has control over their property. It's up to them to make a determination whether they want to let people in or not. Our school resource officer is there to make that connection between the students and law enforcement, but they have to adhere to our policies and guidelines that are required by our state.
Thank you. Okay.
So I just wanted to reiterate that I have some of the same concerns that the residents do here. And I worded it a little bit different, so your answer may be a little bit different. If Duval Police Department is called into a situation where federal immigration agents are using excessive force, what would be the department's response or role to that?
It'd be to document, do whatever we can to make sure it's not within our policy or state law.
Okay.
And forward it off to the prosecutor for review.
Okay.
And if it is excessive, we're still in communication with the prosecutor's office to figure out what steps they will take.
Oh.
Does that include extending up to the protection of life on the street? I mean, if somebody is in imminent death and imminent danger on the street in front of you, where does your observation stop and your intervention begin?
Sanctity of life is always a primary concern for us. But there are times when federal officers can use deadly force. I'm not talking about anything that's happened in the past, but there are times when they can. It is up for us to make sure we do our best to determine whether that is lawful or unlawful. And part of that has to go through an investigation. The investigation of an officer involved shooting in our state is very intense. It's very thorough and it's very in depth when we go through that process. There are independent investigation teams that come out to do that type of investigation, which includes quite a bit of determination whether or not there are charges that are filed. It is something that a prosecutor will make that determination.
I think it's helpful to note that that investigative unit is actually on the council agenda. The contract to allow us to participate in it's called IFIT. What is it?
King County, King County Independent Force Investigation.
So Washington State has very, I think, rigid rules around any use of force by police officers, whether it's state, city, county, federal, will go through an investigation here in the state of Washington. And we participate in IFIT. So anything that happens in Duval will be investigated by this outside agency. Our own officers don't investigate ourselves when it comes to uses of force. It gets referred to an outside agency.
Question. So what I'm hearing is really disconcerting because it seems like you're saying that there will be an investigation, but nothing will be done. So that investigation, no matter how detailed or how thorough, is going to be a little consolation to anybody who was killed or badly injured, maimed, or their family. And I find it atrocious that we can't make it clear that if there is one, like on the fly, in the heat of the moment, we see that seems like it's unlawful, let's prevent that and try to de-escalate. It's amazing that we seemingly, I'm sorry, I don't mean to sound offensive, but can't get a straight answer or a very clear answer. And I know it's a very circumstantial, but I would almost put the question and say, is there any circumstance where you would say, yes, we would intervene in that case and try to de-escalate the federal agent?
The questions you're asking are not a black and white answer. There's a lot of minutia that goes with that, and we will do our best to determine if there is the ability or need for us to intervene. But there's a lot of information that I don't know. I can't give you a black and white answer based on
I
will
know,
we take that action or not until I know the circumstance.
no, but are there circumstances where you would say, it's time to take action? You can make a judgment on the fly in that moment and not say, well, we'll investigate it after it happens and in a month or 3 or 6, we'll figure out whether it was lawful.
There could be circumstances, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Kind of on the flip side of that, and if somebody that was protesting, so we have a bunch of protesters out there, and some of the protesters are, I wouldn't have them here, but throwing frozen water bottles or firing fireworks at the federal officers, would you take action in that situation?
Our role is to de-escalate, and we would try to de-escalate that situation one way or the other. If there are circumstances where people become assaultive, we will do our best to document that and forward any case off to prosecutor if we need to.
So again, it's just documenting.
It's filing a case. If we believe that there's probable cause that somebody has committed a crime, we will forward that case off to the prosecutor for them to review.
So there would be, I guess, yeah.
I heard an and there. There was a de-escalation and.
And your question whether we would arrest people on the spot, that we were.
Yeah, we're trying to stop it from happening.
That's part of our de-escalation.
Okay, so there would be some kind of stopping of it so that we don't get to a situation where maybe they're
Yes.
using or force that.
That's part of de-escalation,
Okay,
to make sure we use cover distance, spreading out. from
okay, thank you.
Yes, I think what would help us all is just a clarification on what your de-escalation policies look like. Because when you say de-escalation, that is very vague to us, I think, or to me at least. What does that look like and what does your training entail as far as de-escalation goes?
So we're required by law to try to do what we can to de-escalate the situation and not use force. And that includes us trying to make sure that if somebody is violent or somebody's assaulted, then we try to create that distance to separate that individual from that ability to harm others. Same thing happens when we go to a type of a scene where there's a fight, something else going on. We try to separate the parties, de-escalate it, try to take down the tone of what's going on. It can be through a number of different things, whether it's through just our presence being there. Oftentimes that's a good tool for de-escalation, or it could be actually where we physically get between individuals to cause that distance to occur. There's a lot of other tools we can utilize, but primarily when we get to those type of situations, it's not necessarily that we utilize force to de-escalate, but we use language, distance, type of separation. We get between the situation that cause that de-escalate.
So you could do that with ICE officers if they were overstepping, you could get in between.
Yeah, we could.
Okay, I think that makes me at least feel a lot more protected with that language. Thank you for the clarification.
Thanks to the community for coming out tonight. I welcome you to leverage the tools that were shared, the cards, the various things so that the chief can work to collate that information and form it into the community response. But appreciate your time today.
Well, I can say one thing before we finish. One of the best tools available to us is our own common sense. I applaud those that protest and demonstrate peacefully for something like this, because that does cause change. And it's important that we have people that are willing to do that. If you're one of those, I thank you. But do it in a sensible manner, in that you don't get overly confrontational. You stay within your own First Amendment rights, and I think that's just our own common sense to do this. even if you have a concealed carry permit, don't bring a gun to something
I
like
think
this.
that's against Washington.
That's
Yeah.
our First Amendment, right? Yeah, that's our First Amendment, right? That's
We
our.
understand that. I understand. So,
But they're.
It is, but I'm just saying, use common sense. You know, in a situation like this, you're not gonna be the winner.
There's a lot of places you can't take it to.
there are certain locations where it's restricted by law. We honor that. We also honor your right to carry within our state and just go through that process. There are certain circumstances allowed by law where that can be restricted at licensed or type of events that occur. That we don't have those here in this location at this time. So we do honor that. Just to kind of also add into this aspect is we often heard through the grapevine about something happening. There was this car looking through our neighborhood, or there was this black SUV that came driving by, something else. We don't hear about it at the time. Please call 911 and let us know so we can come out and identify it, make sure it's legitimate or not legitimate. That's part of our role, is to make sure that we do what we can to identify those issues. That if it is something that I need to make a contact as a chief, I want to make sure that I have that ability to do so. Or if it's something that just seems out of the ordinary, I want to make sure that that's dealt with also. There are individuals in our state that often, I don't want to say too many times, but do pretend to be police officers. And I'd much rather find that individual and deal with that individual and stop them from doing what they need to do so that we can make it safe for everybody else. So call 911.
Thank you.
Super quick, is there a timeline for these feedback cards that you would ideally like them back by? Or I know it's always open to, anyone can always email us or give us feedback, but is there a specific helpful timeline?
Sure, a helpful timeline would be 7 days, a week, but that doesn't mean that I won't listen to it after that period of time. But I would like to hear it sooner than later. That way allows me to kind of consider those for our future procedure and training with our officers to go through that process.
Thank you.
I have one.
One more.
It's one more thing. We're talking about a lot of things here, and I understand that you can't really answer these questions because you aren't in that situation right now. You just have to imagine it happening. But if some old lady like me is standing out there demonstrating, possibly taking pictures, maybe speaking to those officers, and they come and slam me to the ground and I start screaming, help, help, will I get help?
And we'll be there. We'll be there. Yeah. Otherwise, we don't hear about any federal immigration activity prior to that occurring. We will always hear it afterwards, or we'll hear the anecdote that somebody was in our neighborhood last week. I want to verify that. I want to make sure it's true. I want to make sure that I can have those conversations with federal authorities if I have to find out what's going on. So that's why we say call 911 and we will get one.
Chief. I think the second item on tonight's discussion item is with you, Cynthia. Cynthia McNabb, City Administrator, is going to talk about the proposed policy on usage of artificial intelligence tools.
So, good evening, council, mayor, community who might still be here, staff. We are in the process of creating and drafting a policy on our use of artificial intelligence tools. So whether that's ChatGPT, Copilot, any other AI tool that is generated potentially from other platforms like Word, all of a sudden has chatbot that's associated with Word that makes it easier to utilize a tool that we're already using. So I drafted a policy, it's in draft form. At this point, I don't have more to say about the policy, but I did want to walk through the process that we use. We have some new council members. on how we go about working on policies like this that come to council, whether it's council procedure on, well, council procedures for meetings, public records request policies, this policy, our field rental policy. We've kind of created a system for how we bring policies to council. This is one of those areas that truly need 3 touches. Some things that we bring to council are pretty obvious. You could decide them that night. So for instance, I'll give an example of the most benign thing I can think of. Allowing the planning commission to change their meeting time from 7 to 6 p.m. You don't need really probably 3 touches to decide that that's a good idea. Policy work is a little different. So the next steps for this policy, you have a draft in your council packet. Next, I would ask by next Wednesday evening, if you could get me any questions, comments, suggested edits. That can come in any form. That could be sending me an email that says, hey, subsection 2A, I'd like to see worded this way. Or I'm not entirely sure I understand this. Can you answer a question? You can send me a whole red line if you want. Or, track change document of things you'd like to see differently. Then the next step after that is I will collate all of those. I'll create a single document that shows every requested edit or comment. I will put it in track changes with a comment on the side that says, Councilmember Olin suggested we change this. Councilmember Hernandez offered this edit. There'll be a single document that will go into the packet on 2/17 for that council packet. Then in the meeting on 2/17, we'll walk one by one. So, Councilmember Mercer would like to see this change. How does council feel about that? And we'll work through the suggested edits one by one. We won't vote that night. I will repackage the policy again for March 3rd that will have kind of the consent vote of council for 2/17. So it truly is just tonight laying out what the next steps are. I'm happy to answer any questions tonight too, just about overall philosophy, because I know you all haven't had a ton of time to make comments or suggest to edit. So that's the process for this. Overall, the artificial intelligence policy comes from a request from Councilmember Schaefer. As we were working through our revised social media policy, we started thinking about when we would ever entertain using artificial intelligence to create social media posts and to ensure that we wouldn't have hallucinations or false information going out to the public through our use of social media tools. And so one of the things when we were working through the social media policy, Councilmember Schaefer and others requested that I come back with artificial intelligence policy, what parameters are. Do you have a question?
Oh, no, I'm just taking the hair out of my house.
Some of the key call outs as I drafted the policy. So I did look at about 10 other cities' policies. It's relatively new. Most of the cities that have developed social media or artificial intelligence policies are big. So I looked at Boston, Seattle, San Jose, California. Here in Washington State, I believe I looked at Kirkland. So big cities have kind of grappled with this and put together policies. Ours is fairly reflective of how other cities have done it. A lot of them have large attachments with kind of use cases. I didn't do a use case attachment to this. Most of our staff, when they use artificial intelligence tools, are doing them, to create images. For instance, the troll stickers, we digitized that through an AI tool, create the troll sticker. So some of the images that you see in our social media, not the content of it, but the images themselves have been generated using AI tools. But for the most part, we are unlike, for instance, the city of Bellevue. So in the city of Bellevue, they did a massive project to run their entire permit processing through artificial intelligence. They got a grant to do it. It's a very complex, deep project. We don't have that. Maybe someday we will have the means and resources to do a big project like that, but we don't now. So I wanted to touch on in creating policy, one, that staff don't have to use it, but can, but that they need to do it responsibly, ethically, make sure we're human review of information, that we're screening for bias and discrimination. We lessen our environmental impact where we can, and that we ensure that we are retaining our prompts for public records requests. So that's kind of the highlights of the policy, but happy to answer any questions.
Sort of one, I think you addressed one of my questions, which was sort of the source data. It's timely because I'm going through some certification right now at work, and you touch all the, Microsoft responsible AI pillars, it's inclusive of all these, the bias, inclusiveness, and accountability. You also touched on the permit, which I was going to ask about, and my question was really more around that. Is obviously there is a lot of places within, whether it's OpenGov or the permit process, where you can start to incorporate agentic AI for responses, whether it's public records requests, whether it's permitting. There's obviously the social media. This is designed in mind that it can grow. That's, I guess, my piece in terms of whether it's additional sections but it'd be great if the structure incorporated sort of the future as well as sort of just the static document for today.
Yeah, I can see where we have a couple platforms that we use that are really customizable and have been customized for much larger cities. So the best example is OpenGov. We have a robust OpenGov system that we use for permitting and budgeting. That system is it Austin or Dallas, does quadruple what we use it for. And can be customized to do any number of things. We use it for a fairly limited scope. But as those tools get better and they become more affordable for smaller cities, we might introduce new tools within that platform to make our work more efficient. So we would anticipate, which is partly why, as written, it's fairly general, our policy, that we could grow with some of our software platforms over time.
Any questions from council?
I thought the policy, generally speaking, was fine and appropriate and good. The one thing that kind of jumped out at me was, from a tactical level, there was something in there about how in the event we had to recall, employees would be tasked, or staff would be tasked with going back and having to pull that out. That could be really laborious, and I just wonder, for a practical matter, we might have to refine that part of it, and maybe we don't know what that looks like until we actually get to it. But that seemed to be something that might need help at some point.
Yeah.
And maybe that's a later thing, not a now thing. I mean, that just jumped out at me as something that could be really tricky.
Yeah, so the way we would go about that, which is why there's a section on you cannot use personal AI accounts for city business, is we would ask individual users like me. So with our Microsoft account, we all have Copilot. So occasionally I'll run something into Copilot that says, I'll put in a sentence that I wrote. And like one I did recently was, please rewrite this sentence with a frame of like optimism and future planning or something like that, right? Because my sentence was like highly technical and it wasn't really messaging, it was information sharing. So, but if somebody said, did the city administrator in a public records request give me all of their prompts on this particular topic, I would have to go into Copilot and try to find, with the help of IT, because I'm not terribly tech proficient in that way. I would have to search my own prompts, the log of them, to provide them in the public records.
And the model that you use, because the models evolve and the date, so that's where signing in on that account is relevant, because it date stamps the request and captures all that information as metadata.
Yeah, so we have to provide the metadata to that. Now, I will also say that this is an area that is being litigated in Washington State under our public records request laws, which are among the most open in the country. In Washington State, almost everything is disclosable here if it's not otherwise accepted, but we have our sunshine laws are pretty all encompassing. And so this is kind of one of those new areas of interest for folks to ask for metadata for AI. I'm not going to speak out loud whether we've got one or not, but it would be really hard if individual employees weren't tasked to try to do their own logs because we all don't have access to each other's logs that way, and the clerk couldn't go through all of our logs. So even now, I have to go through my own emails, my own text messages, my own phone calls to produce to the clerk. So this would just be one more thing that I have to produce. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, it's a tough one. Okay.
Other questions from council? All right, we'll get you some feedback.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
And the last item on tonight's workshop is a presentation from the Department of Finance regarding the Washington Department of Retirement System audit, and that will be presented by Bethany Flynn, our Director of Funds.
Couple of slides here. Good evening, I'm Beth Goodman, Finance Director. Sitting next to me is our Finance Manager, Brian Randall. The Washington State Department of Retirement System completed a compliance review for the city of DeWalt. So mayor and council members were recently emailed a copy of that compliance review report that was dated 1/12/2026. So I just wanted to share some information and answer any questions you may have on that report. Go to the next slide. So first of all, the purpose of the review is to ensure compliance with laws and regulations related to the rules for each specific retirement system. The city's records were reviewed for compliance with enrollment eligibility, retiree reporting, and compensation reporting for our LEOP, which is law enforcement officers and firefighters, and then our PERS, which is public employee retirement system plans. PERS contributions, anybody interested, are currently 5.38% for employees and 5.58% for employer. These percentages are applied to contribution or that period. LEOP contributions are 8.53% for employee and 5.32% for employer. So the employee and employer contributions that are paid monthly to the DRS system, the actual contributions to these retirement plans are accurate and they are not in question. I just wanted to clarify that. The information that we report that is reported by the city for retirement eligibility and compensation paid to employees, that is what was reviewed. Because retirement benefits for the plan members are based on this reported compensation and service credit information. So that's where it's important to be accurate. Yeah.
Question just for folks who might be watching this remotely. Could you spell out what the acronyms, the LEOP and the PERS?
I did. Law enforcement officer and firefighters.
Okay.
LEOP, and PERS is public employee retirement system.
Okay.
So reporting compensation differently than earned has the potential to create an incorrect benefit paid at retirement plan members. I think it's important to note also that the last DRS compliance review for the city of Duval was in 2003. So next slide.
I think there's one more point. And that their own policies and procedures say they're supposed to audit us every 5 years.
Good call that.
Yes.
So as a finance team, we welcome all reviews and audits, as this is the best way to ensure that we are doing what we need to do for compliance and accountability. The last DRS review was over 20 years ago. Much has changed in 20 years, including our finance staff.
We welcome that guidance and recommendation that they provide through the review. Many of the issues noted in the report happened before my time and Brian's time with the city. I've got new members of the team. So, we are looking into those recommendation noted, and making changes. So we want you to understand that reporting this information to DRS is not as easy as just pulling the data and uploading the data file into the DRS system. Like, it does require accessing the DRS online reporting system. It requires some manual entering and reviewing and adjusting line by line for each employee, each month to ensure accurate information. Each type of compensation recorded, because we don't just pay regular compensation, we're doing comp time payout, vacation payout, retro pay in case there's any sort of bureau corrections to be made, and all of these have specific reporting codes that have to be used to identify each day. So it's a lot of detailed information. Even when you're paying compensation currently that maybe was earned in a prior period, we have to make sure it's reported under the prior date, not the current date it was paid. So there's a lot of detail. Also in the system, we're entering hire dates, separation dates, also work hours. We're in a situation now where we're paying on a salary-based basis, but our timekeeping is tracking actually earned work hours. So we've got some crosswalk between what they're working and what we're paying. And so we have to think about how we're reporting those hours. So we're hopefully in the future trying to refine our processes to be more clear about that, which allows for more accurate and clear reporting. The system also to navigate is not very intuitive or easy. We welcome the clarity from the guidance and the recommendations provided in this review report, and we support the efforts to improve our internal reporting processes. And you can go to the next slide. So members of the finance team will continue to train on our DS reporting and reporting systems. And we are currently working to report all the corrections noted in the review report. The team is, will formally document all reviews of eligibility, will adhere to all reporting requirements. We will respond timely to requests for information. Again, those are issued through the system with no deadline. And a lot of them happened in 2019, whenever, and we've had changes of staff. So, we're going to back to make sure that we're responding to all of their requests for information. We'll continue to do that timely. And for the DRS review team, the goal is for DRS to perform a compliance review every 5 years. It's been 20 years since we've had one. And we do welcome the future reviews and the opportunity to ensure that that we are compliant with laws and regulations of the DRS. And of course, we appreciate all the support and guidance from council on these matters. Thank you. Any questions?
Questions from council? None. Thank you. So, that sort of brings us to the end of discussion items. I had sort of an item I wanted to bring forth and we'll go to the order, and then if there's any other good order amongst council. One is the SDA orientation is tomorrow for Small Cities, Sound Studies Association down in SeaTac. I'm doing the PIC committee again next year, finally sort of starting to understand what's going on in there. There is a request for a backup. I know Mike did it last year. I think that you had to cover for one sort of meeting, wanted to open it up. Mike said, if there were any other interested parties who wanted to do that, it was open. So that was one. We could get, obviously there's not a lot of time between now and tomorrow for the orientation. But if we need to let Robert know. And then the other one actually just came out yesterday, also from Sound Cities Association. And they had indicated they were reinvigorating the Sound Cities Association Equity and Inclusion Cabinet, which focuses on, it's a 13-member elected members who are committed to SCA's values of creating an environment that fosters mutual support, respect, trust, fairness, and integrity for the greater good. Specifically focused on lived experiences, perspectives, expertise of the BIPOC community, as well as encourage our BIPOC members to apply. We also encourage applications from SCA members identifying as LGBTQAI+. So I wanted to make the council aware of that. They actually do have a timeline on February 15th, 2026 for the application. So it's a short statement of your interest. The Sound Cities Association, we can share that after the meeting if you didn't receive mail directly. I don't know who was on it because of the blind carbon copy. But again, given the timeline and the upcoming timeline, wanted to make sure that council was aware of that. So I guess the only item tonight is because I don't want to put Mike on the spot. If there's interest in the backup role.
Do you want to talk just a little bit about what PIC is?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, that would actually probably.
And like the time of month and the time, and where is it still remote? I don't know. So
Yeah. No, it's a good call out. So the it's Public Issues Committee. So it's basically the things that they make recommendations to the board in terms of those issues that they want to pick up, and then the board reviews it. It's sort of like almost like the way the planning commission works. So there's a set of recommendations that are put forward to council, then council basically decides to act on those or not. Similar thing is the PIC has a body of work. It's once a month. They bring an issue. Oftentimes is aligned with what AWC is also driving, but it could be they're more targeted toward King County, so it could be growth, it could be the transfer station, wastewater, crime. There was something about food cart safety, things that are relevant to the cities in the area. And there are a number of policy analysts that present, as well as some speakers. Then the body makes a recommendation back to the chair, and then that is essentially packaged up by the advocacy representation as a recommendation to the Sound Cities board. And then the board works with King County. So then they're essentially a body that then would engage with the King County to sort of drive that into the next phase of the process. So the meetings are online still. I think there were 2 meetings for the last 12 months that were in person. Majority of the meetings are virtual still. And then there's sort of a primary and a backup. So they want to have coverage from across the cities so that you're getting both Bellevue and Tacoma represented, as well as Duval, Incarnation, and similar sized cities. Not a lot of lift. I mean, as a backup, you'll receive the emails, you'll have visibility into the issues that are being discussed. At least that there's a once-a-year orientation, which this year it happens to be, we didn't meet, but at CTAC tomorrow at the dinner, sort of a presentation and an orientation. And then you'd be signing up for 12 months. So,
I'm interested if you're done.
Mike was like, it was very like, I'll do it as no.
Yeah, I'd be interested in it.
All right, so that's okay.
Unless anybody else.
If I wasn't so brand new, I'd be interested in it, but it's tomorrow and I'll work tomorrow.
Yeah, and things do open up. There's other opportunities that will come up with both Sound Cities, and then sort of March is the time frame for a lot of these others to cycle out as we go into the new. So, don't think this is going to be your only opportunity to get engaged, but I'll forward you the information.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Is it too late for me to register already? Like,
I don't think so. Lee said I could basically sort of reach out to her and let her know because I indicated we were working against the council, basically our meeting calendar. So she knew it was going to be last minute. So
okay.
I did just forward to council the opportunity for the social.
Okay.
What is it?
SCA Equity and Inclusion Cabinet. Thank you.
I'm only doing one for now.
Any other items for good of the order this evening? Councilmember Schaefer. Oh, and Councilmember.
I don't know if I have it. It's good of the order. I was just going to suggest, or maybe if necessary, make a motion to move the mayor's report, city administrators report, and council reports from the agenda to the cow, since we have basically 20 minutes.
I don't think you have to move.
No,
to do it.
no, we
There's
did
no
not.
action.
We could sort of move that one forward by agreement,
Mhm.
but thank you. And then Councilmember Schaefer before, I think you had a good order or a comment.
Yeah, I just want to give a readout on a couple of recent meetings that happened. The issue is related to Duval Days and some of the other events that we have here in the city for that matter. Common sense, at least my common sense tells me, well, that, you know, we attract a lot of people, that'll drive people to our local businesses, our brick and mortar local businesses, and everybody's happy. Well, unfortunately, that's not the case. In fact, quite the opposite. Duval Days is a very good example where our local businesses suffer quite badly for business on that day. There's a whole bunch of reasons why. I'm not going to go into that, but there's a strong desire by myself and others to reverse that and try to improve the business situation for Duval Days and other city events as well. So start out with Orchid, the owner of Kona Pokey House, Morgan Henley, who's on our Chamber of Commerce, and myself, just kicking around a few ideas. We met a little bit with a little bit wider committee, including more of the chamber members to discuss with them, and came up with some ideas of things that we can do that hopefully will improve that situation. Some of our local businesses actually shut down for the day, by the way. Their business is so bad. But we have a good list of items to work on. We're going to be meeting more. The chamber has, I think, shown strong interest in getting more involved in that respect and helping us out there. So just a heads up, that's in progress right now, and I'm very pleased that everybody's on board with that, and hope to see some positive change from it.
And the comment just on that one, was there because it sounds like we talked about the council getting, I'm sorry, the chamber getting more involved in a number of these things, so that's great to hear. Was there an action at all for the council in terms of future cow agenda item? I just want to make sure, or you're going to come back after you've had a chance to sort of work on it, because that's the type of thing also that you could introduce, and I want to make sure that new council members are aware that this is another venue that you can introduce a future agenda item.
And there may be. Currently, there isn't, Cynthia, unless you could think of something, but I'll give you an example. We might want to loosen up the signage regulations for Duval Days or possibly other events. Right now, I don't think we make any exceptions there for businesses, do we? During special events?
Great segue.
Yeah, that was gonna say, there's another, that's coming back to the council, the
Yes,
sign.
so
sign
we will
policy.
have sign code updates in the next 2 months or so, where we'll have the opportunity to talk about kind of our overall regulations around signage and some options for how we can promote things around the city with kind of two key components, right? Of not having clutter, which, you know, I think overall the city has had an interest in regulating, but also to make sure that we're within our constitutional right to decide which signs we want up and which signs we don't. So there's a lot of work that's going on to update our sign code, and we'll have an opportunity to talk about that in the next few months. In the meantime, though, welcome the opportunity to do, whether it's an interim ordinance or some interim measure around special events, particularly that we might be able to do to support our small business.
Excellent.
I think we can get creative here with while still honoring our constitutional commitments around free speech and regulating speech.
Sure. Yeah. Good. Thanks.
Something to that on Morgan's?
Yes, I was down at Culturas, down at the end there, and finally met the owner there. And she was telling me how much they cleaned up the place from the previous restaurant that was there. And she was in the back, and they cleaned up so much garbage that was in the back that actually revealed outdoor furniture and patios and umbrellas. So she did a really good job in the back of cleaning it up. And I mentioned that they were involved in art art walk or wine and art walk, and she is not. Doesn't know if it goes that far down, but she would be very interested in being part of that discussion, to be part of the art walk and see if we get some people down.
Exactly, even farther down than that, even farther.
Yeah, they did better, yeah,
North.
farther down, yeah.
Sure.
She did mention to me that the chamber meets at her location first Thursday of the month at 6 o'clock, and I was gonna try and stop in, but I can't make this month. I think, Commissioner Schaefer, you are part of the chamber indirectly, or any of us?
Indirectly, you are as well, by the way.
Okay.
All the councilors.
Gotta kind of rotate, you know, in terms of so we don't overwhelm, but.
So I would like to stop in and sit in on one of the chamber things. I just didn't want to step on anyone's toes if I were to do that, but I'll catch the next month. I can't make this one, which leads me to my next bit of the order. I have to step away this evening at 8 p.m. So if there's anything that we can discuss as part of the council that needs a decision, I'll be here till 8 p.m. If you want to move anything up.
I think we'll be okay.
I think we're still okay on quorum. Right, so
A super
you
quick
can.
thing just on that. We don't have to have an answer now. I was trying to remember what our chamber membership is for the council, and maybe at a future time retreat or something, as we're going through committees, we could talk about how that works. Cause I can't remember. It seemed like, yeah, like you said, you had to rotate or decide ahead of time, or, but it was just one member had to be decided for the year. I can't remember what the rules were. So maybe we can follow up unless you know off the top of your head.
I do.
Okay.
So it used to be far more stringent and kudos to the chamber for realizing that requiring, you know, whether it was every single council member, every single staff to have their own chamber membership was somewhat of a deterrent. So now the city is a single body that can go. So I can bring with me, for instance, a community development director or the building official if there's something on the agenda that's particular. So staff is a single membership, council is a single membership, which will allow you to more than just one person to go.
And we would avoid more than 4 of us showing up because all of a sudden okay.
Yeah, that ahead of time.
Yeah, I mean, and so if all of a sudden we have a wave of council members that want to attend chamber meetings, please let the clerk know, because we would just notice that there was a quorum of council, but they didn't talk about council business. Yeah, we have rules for noticing that.
So we've got about 10 minutes. I don't know if your mayor's report can sort of fit within that 10-minute range. Yeah. And then we can take a break, and then we can rebrief for the
We
council
can pull
meeting.
it up here. Yeah,
So I will
sure.
hand that off to you.
Okay, where did I put it? Okay. So mayor's report, since the last time we met, I attended AWC City Action Days in Olympia with our city administrator, Mayor Pro Tem, and council members Olin and Kozlowski. We met with Representative Springer and Goodman, and I'd say in general, conversations go how they go when you're talking, but to summarize, most of what it was is delivering those flood impact testimonials, which everyone loved. It was such a great format. So huge thanks to Cynthia for doing that. They really appreciated just the organic nature of the document. It wasn't the typical sheet that they get because they often don't accept paper anymore. So the fact that they did take it says a lot. So, and that was just, different, very specific stories of impact of the flood event that we had. We also, requested any possible state support for those farmers and those impacted in the floodplain. But also, not to take away from the victims of, the devastation that happened, but this really underscored our own challenges with growth and transportation and all of those things. So, and then on the housing front, just requesting time to finish work that we have left. And I'd love to see outcomes before more mandates get passed that we then have to immediately go into working on again. So those are some of the things I remembered from our conversation. So others can chime in during council reports later if you remember some other things. Also, while in Olympia, I attended my first SCA board meeting, and I volunteered to assist the executive director in a subcommittee to help develop events and programming for members. So SCA is ramping back up, and I'll be able to help weigh in and give some ideas. So if you all have ideas of things you would love, and I especially love because we have new council members and some medium new council members and some that have been around a while. So if there's things that you feel like I would love a guest speaker on, that would be great for me to know, and I can help deliver that to them as well. Let's see, Cynthia and I also met with our King County Council member, Sarah Perry. She gave us King County updates, and then we also gave her some of our priorities. And I recall also specifically mentioning those two main intersections outside our city limits that, you know, I just like to always be a bit of a squeaky wheel with those and make sure she remembers that some improvements would be very welcome there. Let's see. And then, yeah, thank you, Councilmember Schaefer. I just added that to my list because I forgot. I knew I forgot something that Duval Days subcommittee about economic benefits to not just restaurants, but like businesses. There's businesses that are like therapy or, you know, hairstylists that just, it's an access thing. It's not even, it's not worth being open. Their clients can't come down, which is you know, the access passes are safety issues as well. You can't just let vehicles down here when there's people out. So that was a great meeting. I'm going to continue to attend. They had reached out to me, and as well as Councilmember Schaefer, just I think wanting a little bit of extra, I don't know, thought process there and just a different perspective. So I'll keep attending those as I can, as well as Councilmember Schaefer. But I think they had some really good ideas that will be helpful. And I think in terms of what the city can do besides the sign thing that you brought up would be just, you know, helping share any of the programming that they come up with, like the scavenger hunt idea or things like that we can help share. I also attended the silent auction for March of the Vegetables. And so a reminder, this Saturday is the Lantern Festival. I still have to make mine, so I need to get on that. City Administrator McNabb and I met with the City of Carnation and Snoqualmie Tribe. We have a monthly coffee meetup. That's just a lot of relationship building and updating each other. Then there was a District 8 Mayor's meeting with Representative Schreier. The main topics were ICE and FEMA. So just not a lot of movement yet quite on FEMA, because I think that paperwork just got filed last week. So I also have been meeting with pretty much everyone that, you know, I reach out to and can think of. So I met with Snow Valley Pride and Pride Across the Bridge just to start discussing possibilities of different events in Duval. I attended SVGA with Councilmember Wiggins, Mayor Pro Tem, and our city administrator. So that was a really great meeting as well. We met the Snoqualmie Tribe's police chief, and he had an update. And then we also heard program highlights from the Snoqualmie YMCA. I attended Coffee with a Cop on Friday, which was a great event. And I just appreciate our police departments wanting to always engage with the community. Tonight was also a great example of that. So it's really great, the community policing and engagement and just, you know, building relationships and having conversations in the community. I also observed a student walkout. There were a lot of kids down here. I mean, we guessed maybe 100-ish. It was a pretty big crowd. They were so engaged, respectful to each other. I overheard conversations talking about different perspectives on what was going on in the world. And I just thought it was really great because I didn't hear anything judgmental, or they were just very supportive of all kinds of views. And I just thought we could all take, you know, a lesson out of their books. So, and lastly, I had my first faith leaders roundtable, and I had around 8 participants. I hadn't heard from a couple of the faith organizations in Duval. My idea behind that was just that these are really big groups in Duval. They have big facilities. One example is Redemption Church was able to offer emergency shelter to some of the people that got stuck here during the flood. So it's relationship building, also hearing needs that I may not know about in our city, and some things did come up. The food program already works pretty well, just reiterating that the gleaning and the food pantry, they do not ask for any identification or documentation, or there's no judgment or questions asked. It's literally, please come in and help yourself. And they often can't get rid of all the food. So they really want more people to take advantage of that. And I think that's it. Sorry, that was long. I guess a lot has been going on, but any questions for me? Oh, go ahead.
Are we still meeting with, you know, Coffee with the tribal?
We have been. It became like a mayor pro tem or mayor's thing, and we also found that, you know, 2-ish members from each city was just right. If we go beyond that, it was a little overwhelming. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, I don't know if council wants to try and set up something as well, or try to figure out a way to cycle through that. I don't have to go to each one. We can take turns.
And I think that was one thing that sort of Amy and I talked about. We haven't had sort of a one-off meeting, but the transition, given all the meetings she has, sort of the moving to the community engagement, and that seemed to work well, picking different venues, picking different days. pulling in certain, council members and or Cynthia was, often there to represent staff. Where I can take that off your plate and then we can coordinate amongst the council. So-
I'd be very, I was doing that for a while and it kind of fell off my radar. But yeah, I'd be very interested in re-engaging.
And that we did have an opportunity to talk to we had sort of the tribal, understanding the structure a little bit, the government structure beyond the presentation and some of the things that they deal with and even the places where they plug in, whether it was around sort of the buffer policy that we talked about with Larissa to other things, whether it's some of the SEPA determination, the renaming projects, the park, the engagement. I think there's an eagerness to dig in. I know we're also rebuilding a little bit of relationship there in terms of how we connect. So that might be another venue to do some of that.
One of the opportunities that we've had recently that came out of our coffee with the Snoqualmie tribe. Was it last week that we were? The weeks
Yeah,
blur.
last Tuesday. I think it was last Tuesday.
Last Tuesday. Is a conversation around tribal protocols and how the city engages with the tribe, as well as opportunities potentially in our council chambers to have the Snoqualmie tribe flag, potentially other native flags here. So reaching out to the Tulalip tribe potentially too, because we're also their recognized homeland. So with that, the next council meeting, we'll have a presentation on and a discussion on how our city council wants to engage on creation, potentially negotiation of travel protocols. So the kind of planned activity for the next council.
In regards to pride events with Pride and Pride Across the Bridge, I have a pretty strong relationship with both of those. So if you need a second for that, I'm happy to help with anything that we can do for that. On top of that, the Cultural Commission, which I don't want to speak for them anymore, as much as I love them, has done a small pride events. The art on the wall over here is from one of our pride events. I'm sure they would actually be interested in getting involved with this as well.
Okay. So with that, I guess I will the committee of the whole workshop to a close at 6:57. If you could regroup here maybe at 7:02. Give us 5 minutes, right?
I will call to order the city council meeting at 7:03. I'll go off that. Sorry about that. Okay, can everyone please rise for the salute? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Clerk, could you please take the roll?
Yeah. Mayor McHenry. Here. Mayor Pro Tem Mercer.
Here.
Councilmember Olin.
Here.
Councilmember Schaefer.
Here.
Councilmember Kosowski. Councilmember Supple.
Here.
Councilmember Wiggins.
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Here.
We have a quorum, and we do have one absence that is a known absence for personal reasons. Are there any additions or corrections to the agenda? Hearing or seeing any, so we have a motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve our agenda tonight. All those in favor say aye. All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Next up, we have two proclamations this evening. Our first one is Black History Month. The other one. Whereas Black History Month provides an opportunity to honor and celebrate the rich history, culture, and enduring contributions of Black Americans whose leadership, creativity, resilience, and courage have profoundly shaped our nation, our state, and our local communities. And whereas Black Americans have played a vital role in advancing democracy, civil rights, science, education, the arts, labor, and public service, often in the face of systemic injustice and exclusion, leaving a legacy that continues to inspire progress and possibility. And whereas the history of Black Americans is inseparable from the broader American story, reminding us that the understanding our shared past is essential to building a more just, equitable, and inclusive future for everyone in Duval. And whereas the city of Duval is committed to fostering a community where all people feel valued, respected, and welcomed, and where diversity is recognized as a strength that enriches civic life and strengthens our collective well-being. And whereas observing Black History Month invites residents of Duval to reflect, learn, listen, and engage, acknowledging both the triumphs and the ongoing challenges in pursuing equity, opportunity, and belonging for all. Now, therefore, I, Amy McHenry, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim February 2026 as Black History Month. In the City of Duval, I encourage all residents to join in recognizing, honoring, and celebrating the profound contributions of Black Americans while recommitting ourselves to the shared work of justice, understanding, and community. And next up, we have Lunar New Year. Whereas Lunar New Year marks the beginning of the lunar calendar and is a time of renewal, reflection, and hope celebrated by communities across East and Southeast Asia and by families and neighbors throughout the world. And whereas Lunar New Year is observed through meaningful traditions such as family reunions, honoring ancestors, sharing meals, and cultural expressions that emphasize gratitude, perseverance, and strengthening of community bonds. And whereas the Lunar New Year ushers in the year of the horse, a zodiac year symbolizing hard work, bravery, and resilience, qualities that encourage reflection, action, careful stewardship, and growth, both individually and collectively. And whereas the City of Duval recognizes and values the contributions of Asian American communities whose history, culture, labor, and leadership have enriched our region, strengthened our economy, and deepened the cultural fabric of our city. And whereas observing Lunar New Year offers an opportunity to learn, connect, and share in celebration, fostering greater understanding and reaffirming Duval's commitment to being a welcoming, inclusive, and respectful community for all. Now, therefore, I, Amy McHenry, Mayor of the City of Duval, hereby proclaim the observance of Lunar New Year and the Year of the Horse. In the City of Duval, I encourage all residents to reflect on renewal, embrace wisdom and compassion, and extend goodwill and unity throughout the year ahead. Okay. Next up, we have comments from the audience. And it's still just a blurb in here.
I don't think we have anyone in the audience.
Oh, okay. Oh, is that good enough?
They are the best.
Oh, got it. Okay. All right, we're good. Okay, so I will skip reading the blurb and we will go straight to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve the consent agenda tonight? It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, please say no. Motion passes. Next up is scheduled items. We covered the mayor's report in the committee of the whole, so we will move on to the city administrator's report.
Thank you. Good evening, members of the community, mayor, council, members of the audience and staff. Cynthia McNabb, is our city administrator report for February 3rd, 2026. So we will begin with the Public Works update, this evening with Director Lojewski.
Sorry, but I put myself again. Good evening, everyone. Steve Loniszewski, Public Works. I'll be brief with some updates on some ongoings out in the public. So we have on your left the 270th Sport Court, the basketball hoop and assembly will be installed tomorrow. They'll be here for the next 3 days. That does include Saturday morning to reopen the park. They got to pour some concrete, but that'll be going up there by the sport court. We also have the batting cage system that we had Little League present on for the first meeting in January. So the netting materials have arrived and the vertical poles are already built, fabricated, and will be arriving Friday. So we were working on the plan to get those installed prior to the start of the season. And you will have in the next, probably the second 2 meetings from now, an update to the ball field policy to include this. Next slide. The AED has been installed. It has a quite an odd little cover, all-weather cover for it, but it's on the west base of the restroom facility, which is also a concession stand entrance, and we have installed some new cameras in the area. We have had cameras up there, but they get old. They are solar powered, and the battery does end up dying after a few years. But new cameras are installed, and then we try to keep some eyes on the AED. It is not under lock and key because that would be the purpose of its emergency use. So fingers crossed, it resides there for a while and hopefully never has to be. Next slide. Let's see, a couple of things here. The overlay bid is out. So posted on 29th. We will open on the 24th at 10 a.m. and we should have that in the council packet at the, we got a leprechaun day. We have a St. Patrick's Day. What are we doing special on that or what?
I don't know. I think festivities to come.
Wow. Okay. Just notice that. And then we're working on collecting quotes for the wastewater treatment plant lab roof project. That is new and unbeknownst and not too emergent, but it needs to get done ASAP. So we'll be working on that. I'm working with some Eagle Scouts. We have the local group calling this last 2 weeks with 2 potential scouts and possibly a third. So we're working on some things that need, they don't have their own kind of creative hopes and dreams like the last 1 or 2 have. So we're looking at some basically LM things. New staff member. So Samantha Walker is our 2-year limited term utility. She's a maintenance 1, but she's going to be dedicated to utility locating. So she started Monday. We were able to procure a used 2014 Leaf. 66,000 miles on it, and it is in great shape for $5,700 plus tax, which is under the $80,000 budget. It is raring to go, and very excited to be out there. And she's already out with our crew doing locate training. And she came from locating on the front, so she's stepping right in. Here we go. You'll see some packet items. We have some grants coming up. So Ben, our capital program manager, will be out on maternity leave starting this Friday. So we're trying to make sure everything is lined out for the next 3 months. So he's been pre-planning a lot of things. So Conservation Futures, we are going to go again for the grant for the piece at the ball fields to the east, which would connect to Baton Road. I actually heard from the property from the attorney today. They had that really cloudy title with some deaths in the family and some probate and a lot of weird property transactions. So that is all getting cleaned up. So we may actually have some movement on that really soon. But we're going to ask for current assessed value of the 2 parcels on the north side, which we are grant eligible. If we win, we have to come up with 25% match. Wire 7, we're going after some about $40,000 for some storm-related money for the existing project of Miller Street sidewalk/drainage design. Washed out is April, so April 15th, we'll go after for 2.5 mil for 3rd Ave. We're going to break it out in 2 pieces. Since we don't have any real features for pedestrians or bikes on the southern section, we're going to break it out at Cole Cummins and Kennedy. So from Kennedy down to 143rd, and then we'll go after safe routes from Kennedy to Stevens.
That won't be for another couple months for state routes. And then RCO is due in April as well. So RCO is a Recreation Conservation Office for parks. So that'll be construction related and their max is 1.5 million. And that'll be for the rock. Next slide. Down to it, the county, we've worked with the county to provide them some space to have an emergency response cleanup event or debris removal from the valley and the folks affected by the floods in December. So it is not run by us, it is not managed by us. They will have their own management. It will be Waste Management as their hauler, so it will probably look very familiar to people, but it is not per se for residents to drop off their garbage or their couch or their refrigerator. So it's all hands on them. And we worked up a quick MOU, so any damages and any liabilities, they're in charge of handling that. A little pre-inspection and a post, but it's been very good to work with the county, and they're going to be here this Saturday and Saturday and Sunday, maybe one more event depending on how this one goes. So we wrote the MOU for further than just this weekend. Next slide. Then we'll be down Taylorland, where we usually have ours. And then as kind of a follow-up from the last meeting, there's a lot of activity in the community on right-of-way and excavation / permits for fiber telecommunication companies. So Stephanie went ahead and actually put together a web page on our Public Works pages. So you can get to that information by going to the Public Works site and going to, I put the link there, it's not gonna be very helpful, but so she's trying to give a weekly look ahead on what neighborhoods they're gonna be in. Some helpful links, a little Q&A, like what to expect. There's some images, go poke around on, what a right-of-way means, what is easement, kind of just some basic Q&A stuff. So a lot of good information that she was able to get put together and up in good fashion. Next slide. There you go. Any questions for Public Works?
Councilmember Supple?
Yeah, can you go into a little more detail on the Third Avenue grant or what you said sidewalk, bike path, what's that all about?
So we're in full design for the whole Third Avenue construction project, right?
Yeah.
So we've gone after TID, we've gone after ped and bike, and we've gone after safe streets, safe routes. We haven't been successful on any. So after working with each of those agencies on honing in what they like, TID is very open. The other ones aren't open, but you can kind of work through what they like and what they don't like. So taking our project and kind of reframing it in pieces for each of those different entities is how we're going to break up the project. We're not phasing our project, but we're showing pieces of the project.
It was like a phase 1, phase 2.
Yeah.
You're going away from that.
Not
sort of.
Yes and no. Like we're just trying to work it to our advantage to get anything we can. So phasing it will be chunked off into these grants with the intent we don't phase actual construction.
So sort of like how do you eat an elephant, right?
Yeah, one bite at a time, right? So yeah, but it's about a new project. That's for the Third Avenue project that we've been working on that we're in 90% design.
Any questions for Public Works? All right, thank you.
All right, we'll pass it off to our clerk team.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, John Botero, City Clerk. We just opened the application period for the Human Services Grant this last Friday, and it's going to go until sometime in March. I can never remember, but thank you, Mayor Pro Tem, Councilmember Olin, and Supple for agreeing to participate in the subcommittee. We are still in the early stages of the application period, so as applications come, I'll distribute them. I'll put them on a SharePoint drive that you'll all have access to, and then we'll meet sometime at the end of March to talk about them, grade them, and give them the come up with the amount that they will the award amount. That's what I'm trying to say. Words are hard, so it'll be coming back. We'll be meeting at the end of March. And at the risk of sounding like a broken record, I'm really sorry if you haven't yet registered for the Jurassic Parliament training. I've sent a few emails. If you don't mind, please doing so by the 13th. We just got to make sure that we have enough material. Some of this material is not really from Amazon, so I asked Jurassic Parliament to have a certain number of material, of the material they have for us, but you never know. So I just want to make sure that everyone has all the material. And council retreat will take place on March 21st. Meeting invitations will go out. We're just trying to finalize the time. So just look out for that meeting invitation. And that is it for me. Thanks very much.
Any questions for the clerk? Okay. Quick update from me this evening. So we have been working with Civic Plus, which is our website provider, to look at a tool so that we can send the new newsletter, which will be a synopsis of the city council meetings, city administrator report, mayor report, that can go out to the community. Civic Plus does have a tool. It can be emailed, so folks that want to sign up to receive that newsletter or that update don't necessarily have to continue to go to the website or go to social media. It can be emailed to them. So we're going to start playing with the tool. It's live now. It's pretty nifty. We just kind of drop into fields, everything from either the city administrator report or kind of council action items. And then it builds a newsletter. And then if we just hit send, and it will shoot an email to folks in a built form. So it's pretty nifty. We're going to try to start doing that in March to get at some of the requests that we've gotten from the community to have more information about what happens at the city council meeting, so folks don't have to go back and watch the meetings or sift through information. Last week, we toured our University of Washington Evans School. We have 4 master's students who are doing a capstone on Duval, which is their kind of end of master's program. They are working at looking at our facilities, and their concept capstone is building what matters, municipal campuses that offer amenities that bring the community together. And so they took pictures. I drove them around for about an hour. They asked a ton of questions. So I'm really excited to see what their research produces and the activities that they have planned to get information for their work. And it's fun to work with young students too. I'm really happy that University of Washington selected us for a capstone. We are meeting with the Duval Farmers Market this Thursday to prep for the season. It's never too early, and determine any enhancements we can make to improve the environment for the farmers market. Have a couple of requests, and some we've already been able to accommodate. Dog waste bags, just more amenities in Taylor Park or Taylor's Landing, not just for kind of how people use Taylor's Landing as a play equipment. Playground. Where's your card? 30 at night. So playground, but also, it is now kind of the place for our farmers market. We don't have an alternative location. So thinking about how we can continually enhance that space to make it an enjoyable environment for the community, but also a helpful environment for our volunteers that do the farmers market. And then finally, we have a very busy March. So I did want to point out a couple of things that are going on simultaneously for council and mayor and the community to kind of plan for. So our Holy Festival, we are doing it again. We have great community partners. We just confirmed today that it'll be March 14th. That's also the same day as Jurassic Parliament. March of the Vegetables was going to be March 28th, but they've moved it because we have a political march planned for March 28th. So they requested to move it to March 21st. So March of the Vegetables will be March 21st, which is also the day of our city council retreat. So we'll make it all work. But busy March ahead. And then next slide, just want to show you a couple things. So this is kind of what we're trying to brand every year to make it really clear to the community what we have going on. So on the left was last year's summer event. On the right is a beginning mock-up. We don't have movies on there yet. So the dates are kind of irrelevant on the screen for 2026. We have some of them, but we wanted to show you that we're going to continue kind of that logo and then keep iterating off of it so it becomes like a known brand. for our summer events flyer. So Rita put that together today. I think it looks great. Next slide. We just added the information for the Lantern Festival tonight. They're expecting a pretty big crowd. And then finally, we got in the another set of our planks. So we have Jolie Davidson has done 2 sets. We have those already. Dan Cottrell is doing 2 sets. So this is the first set. So these came in today. He's going to do 1 more set, and then we'll get all those new planks up this spring. They're gorgeous. I'm really excited about that. And with that, happy to answer any questions.
Those just go on like the light posts?
Yeah.
Yeah. Awesome.
And they stack also. So the ones that right, they're like, that's one side of the
You
plank.
go back to screen, John. Yeah, the owl on the bottom right is
Yeah, top.
the top.
Yeah.
Oh,
It'd be one side of it.
Yeah, there's 10 feet each, so 20 foot total, and then there will be another one that one's on the other side of it.
Those are just.
Yeah, and these are the old ones. So we took the old down because, you know, they have to get refreshed from time to time. So we have these. We're still trying to figure out how to best use the old planks.
That's actually one of Dan's too, and his preserved and fared very well. So he does a lot of carving, a lot of woodwork, but his are really weather tolerant. I don't know what he does. They are all cedar, but he did a great job preserving his.
So at some point we'll come back, maybe with the new 2027, 2028 biennial art plan on some ideas for what to do with our old planks, because we don't want to lose the fact that we still have these beautiful art objects that we would like to incorporate into the city.
Other questions? Anyone else?
Just one quick
Yeah,
comment.
go ahead,
I just
Councilmember.
want to say it's really nice to see these on my first city council meeting, because we worked on these on my first cultural commission meeting. So it's nice to see these coming out now.
Anyone else?
Oh,
Oh, go ahead, Councilmember Schaefer.
yeah, you're asking, sorry.
If you have any questions or
Oh,
comments.
no,
for-
no, I thought you were asking for council.
Oh, nope, not quite. Almost there though. But that was it then for you? That was it. Okay, thank you. So next up is council report. Do you want to start, Councilmember Schaefer?
Okay, I went to a couple of environmental forums, that I remember, of over the last few weeks. The first one was the Quality Watershed Forum. The membership of this, committee includes the Quality Tribe, the Layla tribes, King County, including scientists that work for both King County and scientists that work for the tribe. And then cities of Duval, Carnation, North Denver, Snoqualmie, and Skykomish. The purpose of this committee is fairly broad, but probably the main thing that we do is allocate funds for specific projects, restoration projects. So that's, you know, a very satisfying part of the committee. Related to that, we also allocate funds to education projects and a few other things as well. This particular meeting, Matt Polly, one of the scientists for the Tulalip tribe, gave a readout that he gives twice a year, and he calls it fish in, fish out. But he's a scientist, and we actually have traps in the Squamish River, the Snoqualmie River, and the Skykomish River that actually trap the fry and the yearling as they're headed out to the big water. We man those traps 24/7 when they're actually deployed. And then we count the fry that are in there, that are headed out, what type they are, record all of that, then let them go so that we don't kill any of them. And from that, we can estimate the overall amount that actually are headed out to the Puget Sound and eventually even the big water of the Pacific. The other thing we do is actually count the fish as they come back into spawn. And that's a manual type thing. And of course, there's some guesswork there and some extrapolation. But I think we get very good numbers. So that way we understand what went out there and what returned. And that's what Matt's report is on. And there's a lot of details that for me are quite fascinating that go into his report. But the bottom line is we're still trying to catch up to what we think the numbers ought to be. Now, we're not trying to get it back to the historic numbers that we had 200 years ago, but we are trying to get it up to a number where we feel we could take Chinook off the endangered species list and get enough coho and other salmon species up enough that we feel they're more resilient. When we're not there yet. Chinook especially are hurting, and a lot of our restoration projects are actually focused around Chinook and cohos. But you know, there's a whole bunch of factors that are hurting us, and that includes changes in climate and global warming, predation out, not only out in the ocean, but predation right here in Puget Sound, primarily by seals and sea lions. That's a big problem here because the seal population is at an all-time historic high here, and really too many seals for the environment, and they're one of the major predators for salmon. And harvest, you hear about the harvest being shut down in Alaska. That's also an impact, and just overall habitat and environmental degradation has been an impact as well. But anyway, we have a strong financial backing, not as strong as we did have because we're losing some of our federal backing, but we would get a lot of good support from the state and the county, and we're going to continue those efforts. I'm also a member of the Fish Farm Flood. This is called the IOC, the Implementation Oversight Committee, which is a very long name, but essentially what this committee does is we provide priorities and advice and oversight to the county, primarily the county executive and the councils. We establish specific priorities for those specific projects and types of projects, things that we feel need more attention, riparian habitat, things like that. One of the more interesting things at this last meeting, we were discussing impacts from a recent December floods. And bottom line is some people, smart people, scientists are saying it's a complete disaster. Other very smart people are saying, well, it's part of the life cycle. We don't really expect that. So time will tell, and time meaning 2, 3, 4 years from now, when those fish start to migrate back in, and we'll see if there was a impact from the floods or not. But again, that's a very active committee, and I think we do a lot of good things. And the county actually does, for the most part, follow our advice.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Schaefer? No. Well, thanks for your report. Other reports? Councilmember Olin, go
I
ahead.
have one as well, very different tone. But so I attended a summit last week. It was for crime survivors of commercial sexual exploitation. And I attended this because it's really an area that I didn't know much about, and particularly as it relates to our region. I signed up for this a while ago, but it was interesting that this really kind of unprompted was something that Representative Goodman brought up when we were speaking with him in Olympia a few weeks ago. And he talked about how the Aurora corridors is one of the highest rate areas in the country. And with FIFA coming up, that is actually one of the world's most prolific events for trafficking. And so, kind of the bad on the bad and the bad, and so it was a very interesting event to attend. It was full of elected officials and industry professionals and whatnot. But the room was also just full of survivors. And so it was an interesting blend of people that were there. And about the people that spoke, really for me, the most impactful was listening directly to the survivors themselves. I'm generally speaking, I'm a data-driven person. I like to hear the data. I like to know what's going on, helps me make decisions. But hearing the lived experience really helps cultivate understanding and empathy in a way that data just can't. And one of the things that stood out was hearing how, at really young ages, preteen, single digits even, they were groomed and coerced into this lifestyle. And, they were two of the victims there's a panel, a survivors panel, and two of the women on that panel were in their 60s, and they had just in the last decade gotten out of this life and just recently realized that they had been victims. It took a lifetime to figure that out. And it was reading a book and they had realized that they were really kind of groomed into this lifestyle. It wasn't, so many people on the outside think that, oh, well, you could make a decision to get out. And it's not like that. One of them said, it struck me. One of them said, it's a miracle that I'm alive with the drugs that I was forced to take, with the amount of times I was held at gunpoint, with the amount of times I was beaten, with the amount of times I was bought and sold, and this is all happening here. And they were picked up, in Belgium, and they would be on the street watching their classmates driving by. The other woman that was on the survivors panel was she was a trans woman, and she was living with a roommate who she didn't know, and her roommate had been video live streaming her as she was transitioning for years, and that was just published online, and just a ridiculous violation. So those were some of the stories that they were talking about. I was really struck by how low recovery success rates are. There were some FBI statistics, and I think just sub 2% recovery rates for some of these folks. It was interesting, some parallels that I heard. I was speaking last week with the executive director of a homeless shelter, and we were talking similar to what I heard at this summit of how difficult it is to fund prevention as opposed to funding outcomes and cures. It's just so much easier to say, well, the homeless, I'm a little bit off topic here, but the homeless, like he recounted this story of how it's so common for him to hear the story of, man, if I had just had $500 to fix my car, I would have been fine. But instead, I lost my car, I lost my job, and now I'm in this homeless shelter. And that's, it's easier for the homeless shelter to get the funding, keep the beds, to keep the shelter open, to feed the people in the shelter. That funding is easier to get than just the $500 that would have kept the person out of the shelter in the first place. And so, in government, ideally, that's just something to look for if we can find ways to get money to be more proactive. And so I just wanted to call out that pattern. If that's ever a pattern that we can hit, we should try. And I guess finally, I kind of felt compelled to share this. So, the survivors that were there and they were speaking, they've done this before. They've spoken on these panels before. They're going to speak on these panels again. And they commented that despite their efforts, they've seen very little policy change. The industry professionals echoed how difficult, meaningful change has been to make. These individuals have spent a lifetime being exploited, and in truth, as they sit there on these panels speaking to hundreds of other people, hoping they're reliving this trauma. When you talk about these traumatic events, it hurts. It's emotionally taxing. It's really difficult. And when if all we do is hear them, if all we do is listen to them, without affecting any additional change, we're exploiting them too. And so there's some responsibility to affect change on their behalf. We have to listen and we have to look for opportunity to make something happen. And so in the hope of helping for change, in the hope of helping to make the world a little bit better of a place, I wanted to carry that message forward, because someday, sometime, we might run into an opportunity to make something little happen. And if we can, we should. So that's my report today.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Owen?
Just a comment. I actually work on the board of a nonprofit that helps. You were talking about the funding of the cars and such, that connects people to these programs to make sure that they stay out of homeless shelters and such, connecting to food banks, connecting to money health. The one thing that they really run into is stigma, is the stigma of using these. We need to find a way to destigmatize that so that they know to go to them, because we have the money to help them.
Wow.
And it's there and it's ready. And I will straight up admit, I am someone who has used those services. I've been to food banks. I've had to use money to pay rent once. There's nothing wrong with that. We have to destigmatize that to get people to use those programs. And anything that we can do here to help with that and everything else that you talked about, I'm absolutely 100% on.
Awesome.
I got involved with that nonprofit because they helped me, and that was my way to pay it back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Other council reports?
So, sort of just a brief update, you touched on sort of two of these, I think as you said, with Representative Springer, but more so with Representative Goodman, you kind of never know where the conversation in the room's gonna go. I would encourage council, they've been doing a lot of virtual town halls on a regular basis. Given this is a particularly short session and it's evolving very, very fast, if you get those emails or you have an opportunity, you don't have to listen to the whole thing, you drop in these issues as well as others are sort of discussed in terms of what their priorities are. I know we have limited input, but I think that was one of the things, if you have an opportunity to testify, if you have an opportunity to share an example, if you have, those are the small things sometimes that will help move a bill forward, or if you see a negative consequence, the other way as well. The other one was just to go a bit deeper on the Snoqualmie Valley dinner. That's always obviously great opportunity to sort of network, connect, meet, similar small cities, share stories, irrespective of the speakers. We did get the update from the Snoqualmie YMCA. They're looking at a big expansion with a pool. So, that's hopefully that will address some of the that we found in our community. But it was a relatively large expansion because they hear a lot of the similar things. But just to touch on the chief, I had an opportunity to chat with him before, just sort of, and I wasn't sort of fully processing that he was the speaker. But he also, beyond just, here's the update and was really, had a great sort of life, experience story. He's married to an Indigenous, woman. He's not a sort of a native, it wasn't, well, I'll just say he wasn't part of the tribe, which he acknowledged. But he grew up in the Navajo, working there, and then he's worked at the Tulalip Reservation. But just his sort of grasp of the history and the challenges in terms of, a great example out of you, Chief. That's really, how it was taking community policing to sort of another level. But the piece I wanted to bring back, which I was not aware of, it was sort of great learning for me, is the challenges they've had around sort of supremacy and federal versus tribe, and then even within Washington state, how prior law sort of stripped them of the a lot of it was oversight was given to the sheriff. So they have a lot of challenges in terms of, given the majority of the crime that's committed is by tribal members, but on the tribes, but then the ability that they then have to hand off the cases back to the King County Sheriff's Department, and how they're really working to sort of recapture and bring a lot of that control back into their police force. So it was a great, that was just sort of my call out on, at a minimum, you're always going to come away with some network opportunities. For me, it's like, it was an opportunity to learn more about one of our partners and some of the challenges, and even, bring that back and apply it a little bit in terms of how we think of our community engagement. So just, again, wanted to share that. So if you have an opportunity to attend, and I know Councilmember Wiggins was there as well. It's a good session.
Thank you. Other council reports tonight? Okay, seeing none, we'll move on to presentations. We have one, proposed Duval Municipal Campus Project and Future Vision with Julie Bassick and Diego Rodriguez. Is the podium okay? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so good evening, everyone. Steve Loniszewski, Public Works. Julie and Diego are here to provide the final presentation, wrap up on the year's plus work, and share their findings and present all they have to share with us. So I leave the floor to Julie and Diego.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, council members. It is great to see you all. And Steve said to report out on our findings as we wrap up your city facilities site selection project. Next slide, please. We are gonna hit the high points of the project. Many of you have seen us multiple times before, but I encourage any of the newer council members to ask questions as we go, or at the end, will be plenty of time. We're going to hit the high points of our findings for the maintenance yard and your police and city hall facilities, and then briefly run through what your next steps will be to take these projects forward. Okay, let's get into it. So our project had 3 goals. Number 1, to take a look and confirm that the city properties that you recently purchased, recently, adjacent to the Big Rock Ball Field, were the best sites for your maintenance yard, and then help you decide which of those parcels would be the best fit. We, secondly, were charged with identifying a preferred site for your new police station and city hall, and to consider whether those facilities should be co-located together or sited separately. And thirdly and last, to outline the next step in order for you to implement the key outcomes of 2 really critical plans that you had done previously. One of those was the 2023 facilities update. And this plan really looked at your facilities in detail and confirmed that they had significant maintenance liabilities, and that there was not a cost-effective and feasible way to rebuild those facilities to meet your city functional needs in place. Second study that was a helpful tool for you is the Burke Fiscal Sustainability Plan. The study goes over your different funding mechanisms on how cities would typically fund facilities like this. Okay, next slide, please. Our project took about a year. As Steve said, we spent most of our time working with your staff, looking at your facilities, and then developing objective site search criteria, implementing those criteria as we looked at all the potential sites in and around your city, and then working with leadership and with council to summarize our analysis and be here with you today. Specifically, we did a lot of research, interviewed your staff, toured your facilities. We had 4 briefings with a leadership team and work sessions. We investigated over 12 sites in detail and developed a test fit plan that will show you for your public works yard. We briefed council 3 times, including tonight, and then completed our summary report. So those are the highlight milestones of our effort. Okay, let's get into our key findings on the maintenance yard. This facility, as you all know, is urgently in need of replacement, poor building condition, inappropriate space for your crews to work out of, does not meet seismic standards, is not going to perform well if there is a seismic issue, inhospitable and inappropriate crew space, and a very constricted site that is a miracle that they are maneuvering equipment in there and not and getting their job done efficiently. They're doing a great job there, but that site needs to be replaced. I'm glad you're moving forward. So your facility, public works operation, to see you through what you need today and into the future, you need about 2 acres. You need to build about 20,000 square feet. It needs to be close, but ideally out of the core of town. We took a look at all of the possible properties that met those criteria. There were very few, and by far the best performing options were sites you already owned adjacent to Big Rock Ball Field. Next slide, please. When we honed in on the parcels that you owned around Big Rock Ball Field, we realized that the southern parcel was a preferred site. It's the biggest site in terms of the actual buildable area, given topography, wetlands, and other issues. In building on that site has the least impact on the number of surrounding residences and on the tree canopy. And it also allows you to have a city facility in between the Big Rock Ball Fields activity and the neighborhoods to the south and east. So it's going to serve multiple purposes. We did a test fit plan just as an early concept to ensure that the facilities would work. You'd have enough circulation. The buildings could fit on that site and set you up to go out for design. Okay, let's talk about police station and city hall. So your existing city hall building, there's a number of issues. This facility too is aging. It has a growing maintenance backlog. It is too small to accommodate all your staff and all the functions you needed to do. Hence your council meetings being held in a different facility. Does not have appropriate place for council to meet with constituents, to host community meetings, and to appropriately have executive session space. It lacks sufficient security for staff, has inappropriate ADA access, and there's some just basic issues with building systems and airflow in that facility. Also is deficient of staff parking. Next slide, please. On the police station side, some relatively major issues at that facility as well. It's not been built to essential facility standards, which means, you know, the police stations, fire stations, those types of facilities, we want those to be there when there is a natural disaster or other event. So this facility is not guaranteed to make it through that kind of event. It's undersized, it cannot support accreditation. It has suboptimal IT security space, suboptimal evidence, locker room spaces. And further, its location adjacent to the public parking for Depot and McCormick Parks is an issue for congested response time and even public safety if a police car needs to get out of there. So in terms of what those facilities need, your city hall needs about a half an acre of land for about 12,000 square foot facility, ideally located near a commercial or civic activity center, should include an emergency operations center and some community and flexible spaces. So those were all assumed to be included in our project. For police, a little bit smaller, just under half an acre of land, 9,000 square feet of building area, and ideally located outside of downtown to ensure better coverage throughout the entire community and not get stuck in downtown congestion, but definitely needs to be adjacent to a major arterial. Next slide, thank you. We also had a great evaluation and work with staff leadership and council around ideal facility configuration. We considered, is it best to have these two facilities for Duval as separate sites in one combined building or in separate buildings, but co-located on a civic campus? Different cities do this in different ways. We determined for Duval, it makes the most sense. The ideal scenario is a civic campus with a second choice being a separate site. The civic campus offers many of the benefits of having a one-stop shop for your public, of having your staff be able to coordinate and collaborate and get the most use out of spaces you could only build once in one building, but everyone could use it. And further, it is a less expensive and less complex solution to rather than having to meet the construction requirements and design requirements of the police facility cited in a combined way with City Hall. For site selection, we had some basic criteria. We needed at least a half an acre outside a residential zone, needed to be compatible with neighboring function. Police needed to be on our arterial, as I mentioned, and near a commercial or civic activity center for City Hall. We, as I already noted, we actually cast a wide lens. We looked at dozens of potential property. We narrowed in and did a serious look at about a dozen potential sites. There was a lot of leadership contributions and knowledge around specific properties, history, and potential that were really helpful in this effort. And at the end of the analysis, bottom line, it was less expensive and less risky for the city to leverage property that you already own. Next slide, please. So in summary, our recommendation is to leverage the property at 271st Avenue and Big Rock Road to create a civic campus for your police, your city hall, your emergency operations center, and whatever community facilities council should deem to locate. And that means meeting rooms inside those facilities, as well as any outdoor amenities you might see fit to include. So this is a great location for police at 2.1 acres. It offers plenty of room for parking and those facilities and community amenities. Excuse me. It will help to further activate a growing part of the city, and it will open up, dynamic commercial parcels downtown for private use. In the long term, we also want to note that once vacated, the Public Works Maintenance Yard and the police station site could be linked in some manner to have an amazing civic amenity or presence. Now that could be in partnership with the private sector, that could be something that the city would do on its own, or we just wanted to say bigger picture, longer term, once you execute this project, you have some pretty amazing assets downtown with this property that could be leveraged to do something great for your community. Okay, last couple slides on next steps, and then we'd love to hear your thoughts and take questions. Maintenance yard, you're already underway. The process to design this facility is ongoing. So you've got your site, you know what you need to do, and now you just got to execute. Good job. Very exciting. Next slide. For police and city hall, it will be up to council to make the call and to determine if you want to move forward with the recommendations of the study. Select and understand how you're going to fund those facilities, engage your community in the planning process and in the execution, and move this project forward. So the key steps are to obtain whatever feedback on location and amenities and finalize site selection, to update the space needs and refine cost estimates, determine your funding strategy and target your schedule, engage the community early and often during the whole process, and then finally to complete the design and construct the facility. Last slide, we wanted to mention a couple funding options brought forward from the Burke study and from our research during the project. They recommend, and we see cities successfully use bond funding, real estate excise tax, and utility funds where appropriate to fund City Hall and Public Works. The utility funds component comes in to support the small portion of the project that supports staff that has utilities as their main line of business that work in City Hall. There are also some grants that you can investigate to see if they're appropriate and apply for. Department of Ag has a small community facilities loan and grant program that could work for either town hall, city hall, or police. FEMA has an emergency operations center grant program that could be useful to you. And then the Department of Justice has a variety of community orienting policing programs, mostly funding training and operations equipment, that kind of thing, but potentially could support some portion of the police station. Okay, we'd love to hear final thoughts and questions.
Council, Councilmember Schaefer.
Yeah, I'd like to understand the funding we have specific to public works. So setting aside City Hall and Police Station, there was a comment, I was trying to find it, there was a comment in the document about it appeared that we're fully funded already for the new public works facility, which actually was a bit of a surprise to me. Can anyone comment on that?
Sure. So in the packet, which we talked about briefly, but the Maintenance and Operations Center design contract was in there. Mm-hmm. In that item under the consent, there is a table of funds. So we haven't specifically designated funds. However, in the utility, water, sewer, storm operations and capital funds, there are $20-ish million in fund balance that is unallocated funds. Not that it's not earmarked for certain things, but what we have in our work plan for the next several years does not encumber all those funds. So remember, we're all stitched together by a handful of funds, like I work for 7 different funds. So once you look at how all of the people who work in the maintenance center are funded, Majority of their needs are straight up from utilities. So we do have, if we're looking at an $8 million facility out of 20 million, we do have funds. So it's not, we haven't budgeted yet because this did come up a little bit outside the budget process, right? We added the scope and the work and whatnot, and we're working towards a design and a real number. But yes, the funds are available in our utility fund.
That's sufficient for construction.
And running the other projects we currently have on our 7-year or 6-year look ahead with our CIPs.
That's good to know. So,
Yeah, but it is in the little agenda under consent if you want to see the details.
okay, thanks. Yeah. So if we're talking about a bond, for instance, we'd really just be talking about City Hall and Police Station. Is that true?
That is correct.
Okay, that's good. That makes things a little bit easier. The only other comment, I guess, is to reinforce what Adam sent out in his email. I like the idea of how we can stress to the public how important this is, why it's important, why we really have to do it. And sometimes that type of thing is really hard to get across, but really we owe it to the people for, if we do a bond or any other reason, we still owe it to them to really explain why this is so necessary and important.
Mayor Pro Tem?
I was just sort of gonna piggyback on, and I don't want to sort of look any Councilmember Olin's thunder, or because I appreciate the thoughts you had. And I think actually, I just sort of appreciate the body work. I sort of did the open house over the Public Works and having sort of some, that was a great dialogue as well, because, we got into even some of the deeper into the requirements around, hardening of the police station and then how that, all the trade-offs for consolidation versus separate, the building costs. And I know there's a lot of detail that doesn't come through in this overview, but I know the work is there and it's been done in the due diligence. So really appreciate that, the engaging staff. I think just to sort of touch on something Councilmember Schaefer said, this is obviously just it's the end of one process and the beginning of another, because there's a number of decisions you outlined there in terms of, we need to directionally confirm we want to move forward. And I think we'll have an opportunity to talk about some of the priorities at the council retreat. And then, where this fits from a timing, funding perspective. I think there's the need aspect of that, but the only other thing I wanted to say that I think is super effective, and it came through in your comments during your report, is the narrative that's built around it. So it's not just the need, like there is strategic needs that we need in terms of a emergency operations center. But I think it's also how we collaborate with the community to build the narrative around what also that they will get out of it. So there's the need in terms of infrastructure, consolidation, scale based on the size of the community, the different thresholds and just the ability to meet our servicing needs. But also, how we really bring the community into this to value it as a shared asset to the community gathering space, placemaking. I even saw those planks. You're like, where do we put these planks? It's like, those would be super cool to have in a new civic campus. So I've seen those interior and so I just wanted to put that out there. Again, there's a lot of, this is sort of the tippy tip of the iceberg in terms of this discussion, but not to overlook, there's the needs we get in terms of just operating the city, but also how we engage the community in terms of, so that they will view it, ideally it would sell itself, the benefit, but I know everyone is also, there's a lot of focus on everyone's, lots of challenges, fiscal challenges across the board at the moment. So anytime we go out and there's the potential to ask for money, but I also wanted to iterate that this is a discussion and iteration. We have not made decisions on anything today. So just to sort of put that up there as well.
Well, and I think it's worth pointing out that the slide that Makers presented at the conclusion did not actually identify a levy or a ballot initiative as a primary funding source. I mean, eventually a decision is made, but there are other methods to get a project like this built that is not a levy. And I think, there's been continued conversation around, we're going to levy for new municipal campus. Not only is that not a decision that has been made, it's not what is being represented in Maker's presentation tonight. There are other funding options.
Other council members, Councilmember Owen.
I just wanted to say, the summit that I went to happened to be at the Seattle City Hall. And so, I mean, it was just another example of a good use of a building, of a community public space. And that was a beautiful building, a lot of cool spaces, big forum, beautiful, big giant windows overlooking the wide, it was a cool building. So it was a cool use of the community space. I'm curious whether you know the few grant opportunities that were up there. And I'm sure there's others out there that weren't listed. I'm sure there's all kinds of vehicles. Any idea of how sizable or what percentage are applicable, or how likely we are to actually get any of those?
So I've been meaning to take a field trip up there, and it's still on my list of things to do. So Mount Vernon is a wonderful example of a municipal asset. It's kind of a little bit of a Franken building. So it's electric chargers on top, a library, a community kitchen, and then some city hall features in a single building. And because of the way they selected their assets in that building, they were able to get the agriculture grant because they had a community incubator space, a kitchen. So it led very closely to an ag grant. They were able to get Department of Energy funding because they had the electronic chargers. They're on the roof. So I went to actually the National League of Cities. The Mount Vernon mayor gave a presentation on how she had cobbled together all these grant opportunities at the federal level to build this community asset. And so I think part of the strategic planning on this is to be thoughtful about what assets we would provide the community and put in this building to leverage some of those grant opportunities.
Awesome.
Councilmember Wiggins, not to put you on the spot. I know you said you had to leave at a certain time, so just if you had any questions, I wanted to give you a quick opportunity to ask.
I know there's been a lot of background, it's almost a year's worth of background I'm catching up since I'm new. I read through the documentation. I agree with everything. I mean, I was like, let's go with the campus view, and sure enough, it came as, the recommendation. Let's go with the 7-lot, sure enough, it came up. So I didn't find any fault there. I did have questions regarding funding. I think it's still early for us to get into that, so I'll hold off on those questions. I am excited to see how we could repurpose some of the this building maintenance. That'd be part of the communication out to the community. Like, look what else we can put in here and drive some business and do some fun things with the existing buildings. Granted, they are old and they have some challenges, but we can do some fun things with them. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Yeah, thank you. All right, I got.
Have a good night. Really quick, Councilmember Olin, I want to make sure I didn't cut you off.
No.
Right, you were done. Okay, Councilmember Hernandez.
So I have just one concern and two suggestions. I really would like the city to actively pursue like transit options to the new area, simply because it's a long haul from my place to the city hall. And for someone who doesn't have a car, that's gonna be a ways out there. If we could find something, get in some discussions with SVT or possibly King County Metro adding an extra hop over to that would be great to make sure that there's public transit able to get there. My two suggestions, this is probably for down the road, but I figured I'd go ahead and start here. With the maintenance area and police area freeing up, that would be a great spot to expand our parks and make a nice park complex. One of the suggestions I was thinking about was turning the police department into a possible clubhouse that we could rent out to nonprofits at an affordable rate. And finally, this is probably for way down the road. I would like for our new facilities to really go beyond just the minimum ADA requirements and future-proof it as much as possible. Make sure that everyone can not only get there, but can use the facilities.
Thank you. Anyone else? Councilmember Supple? All right. Well, thank you very much. That was a wonderful presentation, and just thank you. It's been a long road, 1 year, so it was great. Thank you so much. All right. Okay, and next up, we are headed into executive session under our CW 42.30.110(1)G. And there's the chair. Oh, okay. Let me get out the mic. Question 3. That doesn't stay the reason why you're at the
you read the according to.
Yeah, I already read that part. I just wasn't sure. Okay, and about how long do you think?
15.
So we're council will be in executive session for about 15 minutes. So I'm about until 8:30, 8:25. Yeah, 23. Thank you. Math is not my strong suit. Okay, we'll be back.
council will return from executive session at 20:33.
Somebody.
Okay, I'll call back to order the city council meeting at 8:35. And next up, next up, we have a public hearing, co-living and parking code revision. And I just read the script here though on the agenda, or do you want me to go off of something?
There is the same script, just slightly larger.
Oh. I'll just read out here. In adherence to the regulations outlined for public hearings before the Duval City Council, Chapter 9 of the City Council Procedures Manual, any individual seeking to address the council during the designated public comment segment must comply with the following procedures. First, sign in on the provided form specific to the public hearing, and second, thoroughly complete all pertinent sections of the said form. Upon commencement of the hearing, as announced by the chair, typically the mayor, the city clerk will present the chair with the sign-in sheet. Subsequently, the chair will proceed with the public hearing agenda. Each speaker will be summoned to the podium in the order listed on the sign-in form and must state their name and, if relevant, their address, affiliation with any organization or group being represented, and their corresponding role or position within that organization or group. Time limits for speaking engagements are 3 minutes for individuals speaking on their own behalf and 5 minutes for those representing a group or organization, unless otherwise determined by a majority vote of the council present. The city clerk will monitor and enforce these time limits, setting a timer for each speaker to ensure adherence. Comments should be pertinent to the subject matter of the public hearing and respectfully addressed to the city council. Personal remarks are deemed inappropriate. Disorderly conduct, including disruptive behavior such as cheering, applause, booing, or harassment, will not be tolerated and may result in removal from the premises. Speakers may alternatively submit written comments, which will be added to the official record by the city clerk. Questions posed during the public hearing will not be answered immediately. They may be addressed at the chair's discretion after the comment period closes. Copies of the city council and public hearing procedures will be available upon request and distributed to attendees at the outset of each public hearing session conducted by the Duval City Council. And then I forgot to actually call to order the public hearing on co-living and parking code revision. So with that, I will turn it over to Madeline Worthington, our associate planner, for our presentation.
All right, thank you. And yes, if I have not met you before, my name is Maddie. I'm an associate planner here with City. And I've been working on these code updates. And they should be pretty straightforward. So I'll just talk you through what the amendments look like. They pertain to co-living housing and residential parking. We're kind of batching them all together. Next slide. Okay, and the purpose of these code amendments is to ensure that we are in compliance with state statute. So both bills that have been codified were passed in 2024. And co-living housing requirements are codified under RCW 3670A 535. And the requirements pertaining to residential parking are codified under RCW 3670A 622. I just provided the basic definitions for you. You also have those in your packet with the rest of the code update. I think the easiest way to conceptualize co-living housing is thinking about it as one of dorm style apartments. So the rooms are much smaller than you typically see in an apartment complex. And there are also shared common areas. So this can often be a really affordable option as far as housing goes. And it's just kind of a more flexible housing type. And then we have an associated definition of sleeping units, which are very specific to co-living housing. They refer to the units within a co-living housing development. They are separate from dwelling units, which is the typical kind of terminology for a basic, say, 1-bedroom apartment all the way up through, single family home type situation. Dwelling unit is the typical term, but to differentiate, we have a separate definition for sleeping unit. And that kind of helps us differentiate For example, if we're thinking about again, like your typical single family home, if you're thinking about renting out rooms in that detached home, that would be a different situation. Wouldn't be classified as co-living housing because we're separating out those definitions. Next slide. And just to give you a sense of kind of what zones the code amendment pertains to, I just put out this map here. Hopefully you can see that well enough. But basically any zones where multifamily housing is currently allowed, we also need to allow co-living housing. And as I said before, it's kind of just a more flexible housing type. The kind of aesthetics, the development regulations as far as height, as far as setbacks, none of that is changing with this update. It's specifically the type of housing that can be added in zones. And it is up to the market whether any co-living housing is built in Duval. Oftentimes you see these in more in denser areas, like for example, in Seattle, where there's a ton of public transportation, maybe there's a lot of students. So it's pretty unlikely that we see this form of development in the near term. But yes, based on what the state is telling us, we do have to, we need to at least allow for that use in any of those that allow for multi-family housing currently. Okay, and here's just a couple examples. These are examples of co-living housing that already exist. Some are from Seattle. The top right one is from Redmond, so they can look kind of all different styles, of course. And any co-living housing that's built in the city would need to adhere to our design guidelines. Next slide. And I just put up some examples of the amendments that you have seen already in your packet. And so, for example, in the R12 zone, we have co-living housing listed as an allowed use, as a permitted use with this update. And then, for example, in our Midtown zoning district, we say that co-living housing on upper floors is permitted because currently we allow dwelling units on upper floors. So we're being consistent. Next slide. Then here's another example. I know that's pretty hard to see, but we just added some clarification to our development standards table, stating that a sleeping unit in co-living housing needs to be counted as a quarter of a dwelling unit for purposes of calculating density. So currently in our zones, we look at minimum density and maximum density. And again, based on RCW, we do need to count each sleeping unit as a quarter of what would be a typical dwelling unit. Next slide. I also just put up some language from the revisions related to residential parking. This is basically also word for word from the RCW, but we're saying when calculating minimum off-street parking requirements for residential development, parking may be enclosed or unenclosed. Tandem parking spaces shall be permitted to meet minimum off-street parking requirements at a rate of 1 space for every 20 feet. We need to allow a maximum of up to 6 parking spaces in the legally non-conforming garage service parking area to count towards minimum required off-street parking. And then we have to have a provision related to when maybe off-street parking and tree retention are in conflict. So this is all pretty standard word for word language. Next slide. And I do want to point out that these changes to the parking code only have to do with residential parking, not parking related to non-residential uses like commercial. And currently we have one parking area design standard table for all parking stalls. So we weren't differentiating between residential and non-residential. So to make it really easy, we just added these superscripts And we call out that residential parking, the minimum width is 8 feet. Sorry, yeah, so minimum standards are 8 by 20 feet, except for where ADA requirements, need to be met. And then we need to also allow tandem parking stalls, which would be 8 by 40, thinking about, if they're stacked one on top of another, basically. So that, yeah, pretty standard. This is all coming from the requirements from the revised code of Washington as well. Next slide. Okay, and then just to summarize the amendments, we are amending Duval Municipal Code chapters 1414 through 1428. So that has to do with the R12, R20, MU12, MUI, MT, OT, UT1, and commercial zones to allow co-living housing in these zones. And we are also adding definitions to our definitions chapter, which is 1406. So we're adding definitions of co-living housing, sleeping units, dormitory, which is just a little tiny update to say that dormitories are considered a type of co-living housing connected to an educational facility, if that's ever something that occurs, and a definition of tandem parking. And then lastly, we are updating our chapter 1444 to make amendments to conform to that RCW section. So pretty straightforward updates. Next slide. Okay, and then just a recap of our timeline. So we've been working on the draft language for this code amendment for a couple months now. We had staff review. We submitted to the Department of Commerce since they need to do a 60-day review. We made a CEPA determination of non-significance, and there was an associated comment period. We had Planning Commission review, and we brought this to you as well. I believe in December it was. And Planning Commission has had their public hearing on January 28th, and they provided a recommendation. And we provided the minutes from that meeting in your packet. So the Planning Commission has recommended approval and adoption. And today we are in the middle of the public hearing with you all. And we do have an item on the agenda for a decision tonight. So that is in your court now. That's the end of the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
I think we'll save questions for the agenda bill. But I'm guessing is it safe to assume from the empty room that no one signed in for public comment?
That's
Okay.
correct.
So with that, I will close the public hearing at 8:48. And next up is Agenda Bill 26-15, co-living and parking code revisions. So at this point, since you just gave the presentation, unless you have anything else to add, I can open it to questions and discussion with the council. Councilmember Schaefer?
Let's say I have two questions.
Oh, sorry. Do you want to start with the motion first?
Yeah.
I didn't remember that.
Oh, yeah, I do. Yeah, I moved to approve. Oh, that's Agenda Bill 26-15, co-living and parking code revision.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded, so we'll open for discussion. Go ahead, Councilmember Schaefer.
Okay, yeah. In your opinion, are any of these changes optional, or are they pretty much all dictated by RPC?
These ones are all dictated by the revised code of Washington.
Yeah.
We're just taking their requirements and putting them in our municipal code in Title 14. There's not much wiggle room on this.
Not much
issue.
wiggle room.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Thank you. And my other question has to do with the rezoning effort that will soon be facing to be in compliance with the GMA. So I think we're going to see our eight zones go to R12 and R20 zones there's two of them, our 20 zones include R 30. So we currently don't have an R 30 zone, so that'll have to be added as well. Then,
Yeah, so yes, there's a lot more work that needs to
Yeah.
be done on that, and Cynthia, if you want to talk a little bit more, but this is kind of separate from the rest of that process, and this is us kind of trying to get the smaller pieces wrapped up.
sure, that makes sense, yeah.
Yeah.
Councilmember Olin?
So, I mean, I'm all in support of getting current with the RCW requirements. I have no issues with that. I'm curious though, when it comes what other levers we might have for control, and I'm specifically thinking about parking. So for example, when we get into an area where we may have commercial on the bottom, you know, and multifamily or something like that on top. And very small parking allotments, you know, for the residential units there, tandem parking on the street or something like that. They're really, you know, a quarter of a parking spot per unit. I can't remember exactly what the numbers are. They're really may be deficient, or houses are stacked and people are driving up and down trying to find parking to get home. Is there something that we as a council can do legislatively to help reduce that congestion through zoning, even though and still be compliant with RCW?
I mean, so just thinking about this specific update related to co-living housing, they are pretty restrictive as far as the amount of parking we can provide. So there's not much wiggle room there. I would say, I think in the future, just keeping track of, you know, bills that are coming through the legislature and trying to kind of take a look at them as they're moving through and being proactive about thinking about, you know, how they will affect
Support
the
the right ones or
yeah. Yeah, and again, I think, you know, when they're writing these bills, they're not necessarily thinking about a smaller city like Duval, you know, they're thinking about the whole state. And so with something like co-living housing, it makes a lot of sense for larger cities that have a lot of public transportation infrastructure. And so I think the purpose of that particular regulation is to incentivize, you know, that type of housing. But again, just thinking about where the market's at and, you know, the types of, you know, they're thinking about co-living housing as being something where, you know, potentially people are going to live there, won't have cars, can be public transportation, and that's it's tricky to do in Duval. I don't know how likely we are to see that in the near future. Yeah, I guess that's what I have to say on that.
No, thank you. I would just have.
No, you can finish.
I would have a similar comment, just in terms of environmental regulations. I mean, we're updating the zoning rules in terms of GMA and RCW to accommodate growth and whatnot. And I just don't want, you know, is green and sustainable of a city as we can have. You know, I want to lean into that as best as we can. And so just that.
City Administrator Victor?
Yeah, I mean, I think one way to respond to your question is to identify that the legislature is actually moving in the opposite way. I mean, the point of these parking regulations is to say we are not going to require developers to meet certain standards of providing more parking. That, like, so for instance, in the past, we've, you know, said to developers, was it like two parking stalls per unit? The legislature swung the opposite way to say, we don't want to require you to have to provide parking. To incentivize them to build is parking as costs and complexity to projects. So the legislature is over here, kind of want to do all maybe over here, but we don't have a lot of wiggle room with how the way some of these proposals are coming in. You know, one thing I would say is we did have some success at the legislative level last year in Olympia because we spoke to Senator Dingra about certain parking regulations not impacting cities of our size. I think it ended up being 20,000 at the level, cities of 20,000, where they have fairly restrictive parking, meaning developers don't have to build parking. So that's one place where we can advocate is to not necessarily change the laws that are coming out of the legislature because they're pretty intent on them, but to exempt cities our size from them. It seems to be the easier area of relief.
Oh, did you have a follow-up or?
Well, to that point, if we're negotiating with Toll Brothers or something like that too, I would imagine that we would have the leverage to be able to say, well, if you're gonna come in and do this, then we want parking to be a part of that.
We cannot require it.
Okay.
Yeah.
We can't have a development agreement that would require that.
Okay.
Yeah, and I can just add, we set a minimum number of parking stalls, but, and there are different schools of thought on this, but, you know, when a developer comes in, they should also be thinking about what the demand is going to look like. And so, for example, with co-living housing, if we have a very small minimum number of stalls required, that doesn't mean that a developer can't come in and say, we are going to include more than your minimum. We just set the minimum.
Mayor Pro Tem Mercer?
Yes, I was gonna just sort of add one thing, because I think there were sort of two pieces that we saw some of this at the AWC sort of city action days is, it wasn't just the legislature, it was also the governor. So it was like all the way down, it was, you know, so a lot of this is being pushed to the legislature from the governor. And I think there was the ask around the pause, and feedback in the room was like, don't count on a pause. There's more coming quicker. But, you know, I've approached a lot of this, you know, from sort of that rational pragmatic, is that there is the what's in the code versus the economic realities of it versus what people would want here. And so so much of this is a pencil exercise in terms of meeting the letter of the law, but it doesn't pencil out on paper. So, you know, it won't necessarily, you know, build it. And I think that's one of the key things around sort of the parking, because it is a minimum standard, but any developer who's Duval knows that there's no transportation. People who'd be looking at those units are gonna, you know, well, where do I park my car? I mean, those are the things that drive what they ultimately end up building. I did have one question though, just around the sort of the broader concept of co-living. Because I know we have seen different projects that they start as one thing and they evolve, you know, whether it's, you know, we're gonna build condos, then we convert them into apartments, or we, you know, apartments and then we do a condo. Should I think of the co-living, and I couldn't think of any specific examples, you know, I'd look more to Redmond or something, where you build a multifamily as an apartment and then it's converted to co-living. Does the code allow that, or are they built typically as co-living facility or buildings and they stay co-living? Not that I'm concerned, but I was just curious.
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question. That's maybe more of a building code question too. But I mean, my understanding of the ones that have been constructed is they come in with that purpose, because the purpose is to create very small units and then have more space for the
broader common area and smaller.
Yeah,
sleeping units.
I mean, if you're building a typical 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom units, and then you suddenly decide you want to convert those units to be much smaller, I guess you probably could do that, but and there'd be building code questions too about that. But my understanding is typically you're coming in with the goal to be providing that specific type of
yeah, and I think the key you mentioned is the proportionality of the sleeping units to the common space, which would be hard to convert without a building conversion. I was thinking more like you build it and then you just change the status, but you'd almost have to build it as an apartment with a bigger common area and then 4 rooms, and then come in and say, well, now I'm gonna, you know, repurpose it to make each one of those rooms individually rentable with, you know, which is a little different.
Yeah, and the rentable part of it isn't quite the issue, but yeah, just more of the size and the size and the communal space. It's the format of the interior.
And I think that's like way down on the list of concerns, but I just thought I would ask. So thank you.
For discussion, Councilmember Hernandez.
So I support adopting these revisions just to make sure that we stay in compliance with state law and expand our housing options in Duval. But when building these, I really want to see a future focus on like affordability and especially displacement prevention. I live in an older apartment that was built probably about 40, 50 years ago in an area with brand new housing developments all around it. This is prime for just someone selling out from under us and building these buildings. I would like to make sure that we look at the displacement that may happen when we start going down this route, if we go down this route at all. Co-living isn't my favorite form of housing, but in this market, no one's building small houses or duplexes. And I'd rather see options that keep people here than have them move out. I also want to make sure that people who are here can stay here as well.
Anyone else?
Oh, I was just gonna say, co-living is sort of an old concept because like last century, they had boarding houses all over the place, you know, this is basically
Yeah.
the same thing as a boarding house. I don't know, I guess they went away. Now they're coming back.
All this new again.
Any other discussion? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve Agenda Bill 26-15, which will adopt the proposed code revisions to Title 14 regarding co-living housing and residential parking. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. Next up, we have Agenda Bill 26-16, non-represented staff, council members, and mayor's comp review with our city administrator, McNabb.
Good evening. I don't have a presentation or slide deck for this. This is, I think, the third touch on the topic to council. Your agenda bill identifies 3 positions that were marked as potentially out of range of the market. I wrote a fairly lengthy agenda bill describing the analysis that went into looking at our non-represented positions, identifying the market for them, and then other factors that will go in from an equitability perspective on whether or not they should have a market adjustment within our salary classification table. Finance did a nice job of we didn't redo the allocation of duties that currently exist to the department. So for instance, the finance director is spread over several funds. The percentage of the finance director position is general funded, but other, the utilities, which are revenue generating funds, pay for a portion of that position's salary. Similarly, the clerk and the city engineer. So interestingly, the impact to the general fund is fairly minimal given these positions. So at this point, given the analysis, the equity concerns, and also the marketability of the positions, the agenda bill recommends adjusting the salary for the city engineer, the city clerk, and the finance director. Happy to answer any questions.
I do have a question, but do you want to motion again? No. I move to approve Agenda Bill 26-16, approving a salary adjustment for non-representative staff, as just described by the city administrator.
Second.
Okay, so moved and seconded. Discussion, Mayor Kardon, go ahead.
Yeah, so it was more of a clarifying question around sort of execution. I think, we focused a lot on building a culture, equity and parity in role, and then also retention as sort of a key underpinning of building a functioning city staff. I was curious in terms of there's obviously the adjustment in terms of the levels. In terms of implementation, I'm not that familiar with if the staff, which I assume they do, have an annual performance review where their compensation is adjusted or other things. From a timing perspective, that's the one thing I didn't see included. If this would be, done immediately, if it would be done during part of the annual performance review, if you could just talk to that a bit.
Yes, and I should have included that the intent is effectuated immediately because we have effectuated the community and economic development director position. So that would be the intent, is to make those changes, and then over the course of the year, that salary distribution would end up with about $7,000 at the end of this biennium to the general fund, and then we would of course incorporate all of it into the next biennium. The second question, we actually do not have pay attached to performance. So you have a two-part question there is, do we do performance reviews? The answer is yes, we do annual performance reviews for all of our staff in
It's
the
more of the
city.
level adjustments.
No, it's more of how I would term an annual conversation.
Okay.
Of, the questions that we ask in our annual performance conversation are, are we meeting your needs? Like, are we giving you the training you need? What goals do you have for the future year? It's a kind of a competency-based performance conversation around customer focus. I'm trying to think of the 5 competencies that are listed. I don't have them off the top of my head, but it's really around, I'll take customer focus because that's the one that I know for sure is there. And it's ranked 1 through 5. Like, are you providing an expert level of customer service within the city in your role? 1 is not a failure, it's a development opportunity. If you rank a 1, how can we help you get to 5 or to 4 even? So it's really more of a performance conversation. If we applied pay for performance for any unionized staff, it would have to be negotiated. And some cities, including our friends up over the hill, are having a not so successful time with that. And then for non-represented staff, we don't have our pay associated with performance. We get the same annual COLA adjustment that represented staff do. The complexity here is represented staff, in addition to their COLA adjustment, have the opportunity to bargain increases beyond a COLA adjustment. So if they're out of market, we look at that during the collective bargaining process. For non-represented staff, absent doing a classification and compensation study like we did this year, there's no mechanism to trigger a salary review because our performance evaluations don't do that.
Okay, so you highlight why this is important.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Councilmember Schaefer, did I see your hand up?
I was just gonna move to approve the agenda.
Oh, okay. What other, I think we have a motion and second already on the table. So, okay, any other discussion or questions? Okay, so it's been moved and seconded to approve Agenda Bill 26-16, which will authorize the city to amend its pay schedule to reflect the reclassification of the city clerk, finance director, and city engineer. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Okay, motion passes. Thank you. And lastly, we have Agenda Bill 26-17, which is contract amendment with BHC Consultants for on-call planning support with City Administrator McNabb.
Similarly, I don't have a slide deck for this. I wrote a fairly extensive agenda bill describing the need for on-call planning support. We have a fairly substantial body of work in the planning department in terms of necessary regulatory updates. I think both congratulations and a big appreciation to our associate planner, Maddie, for helping us work through that list tonight. And thank you to council for approving that. One more thing that we can check off the whiteboard and celebrate tomorrow. BHC has been doing a really good job with on-call planning support, supporting the planning team, both on a day-to-day basis, as well as getting us through some of our regulatory updates. The on-call planning support will continue to facilitate that work and get some big projects like the sign code and zoning changes off the deck this year.
On page 4, there is wording for a motion if someone would like to make a motion.
I move that city council approve Agenda Bill 2617, authorizing the city to amend its budget and to authorize additional funding for on-call planning support services with BHC Consultants.
Second. It's been moved and seconded multiple times. Any more discussion or questions for this item? Not seeing any. So we'll take a vote. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed say no. Motion passes. That is the end of our agenda. So if there are no objections, we'll adjourn at 9:09.